The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call the 1:30 September 14th meeting of the Local Government Commission to order. We'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance and then have Secretary Marshall lead us in the salute to the North Carolina flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of North Carolina and pledge to the old North State love, loyalty, and faith.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today, either by virtually or in person. And with that, I'd like to start out introducing our newest member to the Local Government Commission Board, Mr. Paul Butler. Paul has served in many different important roles in the state of North Carolina. He was chair of the parole board for a period of time, as well as other duties that he's had over the years. One is, I think, helping create the Lower Cape Fear Water and Sewer District, which we all know how important that is. Paul replaces Ed Munn, who was a very active and loyal member to this board. And we appreciate all of Ed's talents and contributions to our board. And at the next meeting, we'll have a resolution honoring his service. Ed, as you know, I think was from Gastonia, and Mr. Philbeck is from Shelby, and Mr. Butler is from White Lake. So we're sort of spreading out the lake to give us the representation we need. So we have Mrs. Harris from the Nash, Edgecombe, Rocky Mount area. We have Mr. Bass from the Northeast. I'm from the Triad. Paul's from the Southeast. Mr. Philbeck and forget one. Mayor Patchett from the Charlotte area. So thank you all for joining us, and Paul, thank you for agreeing to be on this board.
Honored.
Any opening remarks you'd like to make?
I'll just sit and listen, sir.
So I never experienced this in my life, but I did think I experienced at 62. It's like asking somebody to the prom, then they got a better date, so they renounced the person that asked them and then had somebody else do it. So we were gonna swear Paul in today, but he had a varsity level event yesterday with the Chief Justice of North Carolina Supreme Court swore him in the Supreme Court of North Carolina. So I got traded up for a better.
I think the term was we were going to go varsity.
You're going to go varsity. Instead of junior league. So anyway, thank you for your participation. We'll start. We have a long meeting today. We've got some very delicate issues that we need to go through, and we'll start, Cindy, with you calling the roll.
Thank you. I'm Cindy Aiken, legal counsel for the LGC. In person, I see Auditor Wood, Secretary Marshall, Secretary Penny. Still hear us?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Good,
And Ms.
good
Harris.
to see me.
We see you and hear you loud and clear. And Ms. Harris is in person. Mr. Bass is absent. Mayor Patchett. He's here, right?
Yes, Mr. Patchett is here.
Okay. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Butler is in person. Mr. Philbeck is virtual. Treasurer Falwell's here. We're going to confirm that Mr. Mayor Patchett is.
He is connected. I cannot tell you that he's present.
All right. Well, we'll double check that when it's time to vote. And this for LGC staff, Sharon Edmondson is present, Tim Ramaki, Susan McCullen. Jennifer, are you phoning in?
She is here.
Okay. I've been confirmed Jennifer is virtual. I'm Cindy Aiken. I'm here. Debbie Tomasco is here. Did Lewis join virtually?
He may be virtual. I'll have to check. I don't have it right now.
Okay.
And can you hear me now, by the way?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Paget.
Okay.
And we are still following the same rules and procedures as we have been for about the last year and a quarter. With today's meeting is by use of the GoToWebinar platform and is being broadcast, yes, live. We are recording this meeting with the intention of publishing it on the website of the department. The written minutes will continue to be the official record of the meeting. If we have any technology failures or problems that prevent our providing a usable recording, that has no effect on the validity of any actions taken by the LGC. We're just going to remind everyone in this Dogwood conference room that the microphones are very sensitive and will pick up all sound, including sidebar conversations. We really need to keep having one person speaking at a time so everyone can hear what is happening. Please note that the cameras are also very sensitive and your laptop screen could be positioned within range, so just be conscious of that. Please mute yourself when you are not speaking. If you are remote, please identify yourself, everyone, when you're speaking so everyone knows who is speaking. Identify yourselves when making or seconding motions. If you are virtual and you must leave the meeting for a reason, please interject, let me know, and if the same thing when you rejoin, identify yourself because those times go in the minutes. We must take all votes by roll call. Without objection, we'll just continue to follow our same procedure. If you make a motion or second, you are an automatic yes vote. Today's agenda for the meeting is on the Department of State Treasurer website, nctreasurer.com. If we have changes along the way, the chairman will announce those changes. Let's see. If we lose connection, we will get it restored. We'll be in a recess if that happens, and hopefully we'll be good to go today. Just again, last reminder, if you're in the room, and I tell myself this as well, we need to focus on one person speaking at a time. And do we have any questions at this point? If not, back to the treasurer.
Thank you, Cindy. Members, item 7, we have a conflict of interest statement. Please take a moment to review the enclosed agenda. Does anyone have an actual, potential, or appearance of a conflict of interest as to the matters that are before us today? Yes, ma'am.
I believe my county is on the agenda for today.
Consent agenda.
No, sir.
It's a non-action item, treasurer.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. Noted. Non-action item.
Oh, a non-action item, okay. So
Thank you. Great.
I live, and this is a Secretary Penny. I live and have property in Clayton.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
It is not necessary for you to recuse yourself if you are in that group of likely situated, samely situated individuals. It's up to your option.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of August 3rd, both the opening and closed sessions.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Second?
Second.
Second by Secretary Marshall. Any further discussion? Hearing none, and I don't think that Mr. Butler should vote on the minutes that he
Well,
wasn't a participant in.
that you might think that's common sense, but he may.
Okay.
Because the board is the board. I looked that up specifically. Legally, he may.
And although the boards I chair, generally, if the person wasn't an actual member when the meeting took place, they don't. We just, maybe it's just being more cautious.
That's fine. I was in my school of government.
Thank you. So I have any further discussion? Now the clerk will call the roll.
Okay, Auditor Wood,
Aye.
Secretary Penny,
Aye.
Mayor Paget,
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck,
Aye.
Mr. Butler, you want
I think I should
to?
recuse
Okay,
myself.
fine, and Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you. The only opportunity you'll have to do that on that topic. With that, I'll turn the meeting over to Karen to talk about Select County 2020 audits. and introduce the county attendees. We have a very short period of time to present their information. How many counties do we have attended?
We have 5.
Okay. If you folks can hear me, this is the treasurer. We have some very complicated parts of the agenda item, but what you have to share with us is equally important. So we appreciate your participation, and Sharon, you may call on them as you wish.
And thank you, Treasurer. As you can see from your agenda, we have 5 counties represented at the meeting today, which I will call on individually in just a moment. They are not here for debt approval, but to talk about their challenges in getting their annual audit submitted on time. I want the commission members to hear from the individual counties about the issues they're facing with getting their work done on time, but I also want the counties to hear from the commission members as to your concerns with the county audits being late. After I introduce each county, I will ask the contingent from that county to make their remarks first, covering the questions that I posed to them in the invitation to the meeting, which to summarize are just to provide a status of the 2020 audit, state the reasons it was late specifically, realistically give us a timeline for when the 2021 audit will be done, go over what changes they have made to ensure future audits starting with 2022 or earlier will be submitted by October 31st, which is the due date, and also discuss briefly why these actions have not been taken before now. I also want to know if the board's aware of the lateness of the audit and the consequences of those late audits. And then finally, how the board is being provided with current financial information on which to make their decisions, and how the counties developed accurate budgets without up-to-date financial information being available. And again, I also want the counties to talk about challenges in dealing with all of these issues. So the first county up is Pender County, and I believe we have on the phone, or rather on the meeting, Chad McEwen, the county manager, and Meg Blue, the finance officer. Can I confirm that the two of you are on our
Right
meeting?
here unmuted.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Pender County's audit has been late, starting with the 2016 audit, and I only went back as far as 2015. It's possible that some of these audits were late prior to the dates that I have, but we only went back to 2015. Pender was late starting in 2016, with the 2020 audit being submitted on August 17, 2021. Current finance officer is a CPA and was hired late in the 2019 fiscal year. Previous audits were impacted by Hurricane Florence. The 2020 audit, was late because the closeout of the books extended into 2021. The county has a new auditor for the 2021 fiscal year audit. And so now I will turn it over to county manager and finance officer for Pender County.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the time. This is Chad McEwen, county manager. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with LGC today regarding these issues, and certainly share the concerns. We've got several things we've worked on that Meg's going to go over in detail that address the issues regarding the audit being late, several internal changes and improvements, as well as Ms. Edmondson mentioned, the changing of our auditor. So we anticipate these things being put in place will significantly prepare us better to make sure we meet the audit deadline.
So to address your questions, I just wanted to go through our fiscal year 2020 audit was submitted to the LGC and acknowledged receipt as of August 17th. And we kind of believe the delay for this year to be a compound of events. Initially, we were implementing new tax systems for valuation and collections when I first arrived in October of 2019. Or they went live in October of 2019. The front end was operating as it was designed with minor tweaks after the fact, but the way the software implementers set up the back end posting to the general ledger required significant reconciliation and revision to the point where we had to go down to the individual transaction level and a lot of these transactions to follow where they were posting and correct them. We have since corrected the way that the tax system posts, confidence in the front end of it, but the back end required a lot of work. That took me until about December of 2020, mid-December of 2020, to go through all of those transactional reconciliations to figure out what needed to be where. But we have since reconciled and revised the way that posts. As you may know, our initial audit was engaged to be with RSM out of Wilmington, or actually out of Morehead City. And in December, once we completed this reconciliation, they actually sold their governmental practice out of Morehead City to a firm out of Virginia called PB Mayers. Some of the management team contacts remained in place, but our staff folks that we had worked with throughout the audit were no longer part of our audit process because they didn't make that transition. So that kind of led to a lot of repetitive requests and duplication of efforts because we had already discussed things and had to go back and recover them with the list of information continuing to get longer and longer because they were asking more questions since the folks we had discussed those with weren't initially there. The CFO was also one of the outstanding items from that field work, which was turned in late November, early December. And the major programs we were informed of the major programs that we're going to test in March 26th of 2021. The initial draft of the report was indicated to us that it would be received in mid-April, but we didn't receive that until July 15th, and it was missing our transfers journal entry for millions of dollars between many different funds. So we had to send that back to them for revision to include that journal entry. We had sent them our transfer schedule and the journal entries back in September when they were here, but they didn't include it in our audit, so we had to send it back for those corrections, which was an additional delay. And then once the audits were received and exchanged, there were additional IT issues on the part of RSM to PB Mayers. They had access controls where our technical reviewer could not see our work papers from RSM because they had made that transition and she was trying to get access. But the folks from PB Mayers made it clear that they had asked for this access for weeks or even months, but that they hadn't gotten the attention that they needed from the RSM folks. So for this year, as Chad mentioned, we've engaged a new audit firm, Martin Starnes and Associates, who we believe to be extremely reputable and very experienced with governmental auditing in North Carolina. We had a conference call with the management team from MSA last week. Chad and I did to establish that we're on the same page, ready for our fiscal year 2021 audit. We've sent them significant information that they needed to make selections from. They've sent those selections back to us. We're pulling those now. We have some additional items that they requested by the 15th, which is tomorrow, and we're going to send them all of that information by the 15th, and we'll have a few pending items before field work next week. Field work is scheduled for the week of September 20th, and then should the auditors need additional field work time, the budget manager and I are prepared to draft the financial statements for technical review by the audit, the MSA partners. One thing I wanted to point out, you asked about what changes we've made to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Previously, there were 100 to 150 client journal entries after the TB was provided to the auditors that they had to make in addition to their own report journal entries and that kind of thing, which we've significantly reduced to around 10 to 20 over the last 2 years. Some of those being the things I mentioned, like the tax system reconciliation journal entries. We hope to have only report required journal entries this year. We've spent the last 2 years making significant improvements in almost all of our processes so that the real-time reconciliation and review is actually possible. We have a deadline of the 15th of the following month for all prior month entries, and that gives us from the 15th to the end of the month to reconcile cash and grants and revenues and all of those things so that we can make sure that we're ready for the next month. Our procurement process has also been completely overhauled and enforced. The county has benefited significantly from that. And that also has significant board involvement in the approval and execution process. In addition to that, the board has recognized the need for an asset manager position and an internal audit compliance officer position. This internal audit, it won't be a true internal audit function because it will report to the finance department, but it will be that internal audit function where they have dedicated time to all these processes and procedures and enforcing compliance with them and reconciling all the revenues and all of that information every month. And both of these positions should be fully utilized by the end of December 2021 if advertising goes well. The Board of Commissioners is aware that the audit was late, and they also share our concern for timely completion in the future. And they receive year-to-date budget reports that show budget to actual revenues and expenditures to make their financial decisions, as well as compiled projections a couple of times a year from our Davenport financial advisors when making future debt decisions. And I believe that addresses most of your questions. I'm happy to address any others that you may have or any feedback. We welcome any feedback.
Questions from staff or from the board? Ms. Harris.
Did she actually give us a timetable for the current audit? I think that was one of the questions.
Could you refresh your comments about the timetable for the current audit, please?
Yes, so our field work is next week, and then they are scheduled to draft in the middle of October, and barring any major concerns or anything like that, should be complete by the 1st of December. From the contacts with our new auditors, because they, we've kind of gotten a late start, and then they'll still have to do their first year audit procedures.
What could step in the way of that time frame that you just spoke about publicly?
That's a good question. I would think I don't currently see anything that's a huge red flag or that feels like there's anything that we won't get done. We've wrapped up most of our our cash, receivables, payables, all of that information. We've reconciled our taxes. The major pieces we have left open are just roll forward schedules for assets and debt, and then the schedule for state awards that I intend to have a preliminary done by the time they get here on Monday.
Other questions? Secretary Marshall?
You said that the board gets a presentation on the actuals to date, but you didn't say how often. Monthly?
The question is how often is the board briefed?
Oh, yes. Okay. So it's more frequent throughout the second half of the year. It's not technically monthly. It's not an established monthly presentation of the financials, but they have significant budget focus at that point in time, and they make all budget decisions based off of a 4 to 5 year historical average of revenues and expenditures to date, as well as I believe at least twice a year since I've been here, the Davenport folks have presented their projections of future revenues as well. And they get a lot of that information from us to begin with, but they compile it in a format that they're used to presenting that to the board for their long-term debt decisions.
This is the treasurer. Is there any board member who is unaware of our concerns regarding Pender County?
They have all received your letter.
Other questions?
Yes.
Auditor Wood.
So who prepares your financial statements?
The auditors draft them and send to me for technical or for review after the fact.
And
are you now reconciling all of your accounts, booking everything on a month-to-month basis?
Yes, we don't always accrue back revenues every single month and that kind of thing, but we definitely book revenue, all of the revenues that are receivable at that point in time. Yes.
I didn't understand that answer. I thought you said yes and then no, or no and then yes. And then, but what about all your expenditure transactions? Are they booked and reconciled, posted every month?
Yes. They're booked
bank
and reconciled several times a week for expenditures.
And your bank reconciliations done monthly?
Correct.
Thank you.
Staff? Well,
Did y'all tell them what to say?
this is the treasurer. Thank you for your presentation. I've struggled as I've seen Pender County on this list. We would rather there not be any names on this list, but I've struggled with what I've observed to be incredible growth in Pender County over the last 10 years, especially as to why we are where we are regarding our relationship with Pender County. And I hope that as the chair of this local government commission, that you take our concerns very seriously. We'd rather you not be on this list. We'd rather, and that would be true yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And we would rather that you understand that an accomplishment is only an accomplishment for as long as it lasts. So whatever got you in this situation, make sure it doesn't get you back in this situation, so that we're back in front of the LGC at some point in the future. Because as I say, based on my limited knowledge of the economics of Pender County, you should be when the money's right, everything else takes care of itself, except not getting your audits into the local government commission. That's the only exception to that sentence. When the money's right, everything else will take care of itself. But this has to be cured, and your taxpayers deserve for it to be cured. So, do you have any closing remarks? Yes, Susan.
Oh, Mr. Treasurer, I apologize. I do have a question. Meg, tell me why the tax system that was implemented was required so much work on the back end.
That is a good question. So when I arrived in March of 2019, the tax systems were already in progress of being implemented. The implementers had, set up the charge codes and pointed everything to where they thought it was supposed to go. They actually, they went live in October of 2019, but prior to that, they did give me a chance to go back through a couple of the charge codes and where they were posting. But what we came to realize is that they were only asking some of the question and only changing some of the accounts and charge codes where they were pointing. And so we ended up having to go back and it was the ones they had asked about were correct for the most part, but they had copy and pasted those to other things that that those charge codes and account numbers didn't apply to. And not being a software coder, we had a hard time knowing what we didn't know at that point. So we actually had to learn a lot about how the software worked in order to even be able to figure out where things were pointed and what journal entries the system was making, because the software folks don't know journal entries. They just know that an account number goes in this box, or at least the ones we were dealing with didn't know journal entries. They only knew that there was supposed to be an account number in this box, and they were asking a question that prompted one answer, but really, if I had known how the system had worked, could have given them a different answer. when I got here, most of that was already set up. I made some changes when I got here, but that was only to the parts that they were actually asking about. So we had to figure out what journal entry it did when it did this function, and what journal entry it made when it did this function. And then we had to change the codes to match where we needed them to be posted.
Okay.
And
So
some of the things were,
So
some of the things were aggregated, so we ended up having to go down to the transaction level. That's what I was referring to earlier, is the aggregated things. We couldn't split them up because the journal entry didn't split them up until we got down to the transaction level.
Oh, good Lord. So how have you changed, or have you changed how you will implement new systems going forward?
Absolutely. We've had a lot of conversation about, and this is not our only new system since I got here, but we've had a lot of conversation about how to make sure we have everybody at the table at the front end of software implementation, because finance is at the very back end of software, and we can make sure it works well for the people on the front end, and those are the people typically dealing with the software folks. But we've got to make sure on our end that it really gets to where it needs to go to make sure that it, because the software is only as good as the information that's put into it.
Poor design. It's poor design.
Yeah.
And they just didn't get it caught early enough. That's what it was.
Okay. All right.
Also, I wanted to mention that we definitely share your concerns, and we don't want to be on your list any more than you want us on your list. So we're working really hard to get us off of that list. As you mentioned, our audits have been late since 2016, so I don't think, I'm not saying they've gotten earlier by any means, but we really had to make some big changes to make timely audits possible. So we're hoping to see that this year, and we're hoping to show you that this year.
Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to Bertie County. And for Bertie County, we have Tammy Lee, Board Chair, Juan Vaughn, the County Manager, and William Robertson, the Finance Officer. Their audits have been late, starting with the 2016 fiscal year, with the 2020 audit submitted on July 15th, 2021. Their audits have been impacted by Hurricane Florence, delays in component unit reporting, and delays in field work being completed. The county did change auditors in 2017. So folks from Bertie County, I will turn it over to you to just briefly go through the information that was requested, and then we'll open the floor for questions.
Susan, Sharon, I'm looking, and I have no one of the names that you've given me. That would be
Okay.
I'm checking again. And if anybody's listening and is on the line for Bertie County, you can message in the box if you're here or registered under a different name.
Is anyone on the line from Bertie County?
I have one. Okay. Mr. Vaughn is on.
Yes. This is Juan Vaughn, Bertie County Manager. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you all for the opportunity to discuss challenges that we've been experiencing. We absolutely take your concerns seriously, and we're working hard to address all of your concerns. So we'll get started with the first question, which was the current status. And as mentioned, the 2020 audit has been submitted, and receipt of that has been confirmed. When it comes to specific reasons for the significant delays in completing the 2020 audit, we actually got a new auditor. The current auditor first year was 2019. and that particular audit was late because he had challenges. The auditor had challenges with receiving information from the previous auditor. Because again, 2019 was the first year. So moving forward to 2020, he has noted that significant delays existed because the auditing firm got off to a late start. When it comes to fiscal year 2021's audit, the auditor has assured us that the audit will be completed by November 30th. So on December 1, he has told us that LGC will have that 2020 audit. When it comes to changes that we've made to ensure future audits are timely, we've recently had some discussion with the current auditor to have weekly calls just to discuss, to receive status updates and to be made aware immediately if there's something that we can do to speed up the process. And we're also putting out a request for proposals for a new auditor, which hopefully will avoid some of the same problems that we've been experiencing. Our board is aware of the county's pattern of late audits, and again, they take your concerns very seriously. Our board would absolutely be willing to offer additional resources to us. However, at this particular point, the best thing we can do is try to strengthen our communication with them, because a lot of the delays are not necessarily on our end. The board is aware of the consequences of such delays, and again, we're working hard to overcome the challenges that we're experiencing. And when it comes to information that the board receives to make informed decisions, we have in-depth budget discussions when we begin preparing for the next year's budget, and we'll go back at least with the current year's budget information and 3 prior years. And of course, we'll use the budget ordinance in addition to year-to-date reports, and our finance director composes a summary on a budget worksheet of the year-to-date budget report, because it's the year-to-date budget report is so lengthy, 100 pages or more. So, and in addition to that, it will include projections and things like that that are needed to inform the board when decisions are needed to be made throughout the year.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from you?
One of the things that frankly, this particular county that concerned us when we did get this report in August is that the county has a fund balance available per their financials of 1.05%, when the average for their population group is 33%. So sorry, I'm Susan McCullen from the Local Government Commission. That is a seriously concerning low percentage, and I have talked to Mr. Vaughn and to the finance officer, William Robertson, about the fund balance. It went from 19% in 18, 7.4% in 19, and then in 20, it was 1.05. So it's done a huge concerning decrease over the last 3 years. Apparently, there were some receivables for FEMA that were on the balance sheet at the end of June of 2020 that were related to some of these prior hurricanes that came in subsequent to year end. But I am really, really interested in getting the 2021 report as soon as I can. I think it's important for this county to be on time in 2021, because even with the if the receivables had not been there, the county still would have had a low
fund balance available. I don't recall what the number was that Mr. Robertson said, but it was still a low number. And I am really, really interested to see what the financial condition of the county is as of June 30, 2021.
Mr. Robertson,
Yes, may I speak?
Yeah, sure. Please identify.
Yes, my name is, yes, I'm Tammy Lee, Chair of the Board. The board recognized last year that we may be having some issues, so we did some cutbacks in our budget and told staff don't spend a dime unless we absolutely have to, that type of thing. And then when we did the budget this year, we did further cuts in each department. We recognize, we're not comfortable with that 1% fund balance either, and we are doing everything possible to get that number up. Also, I'd like to address twice in an open meeting, I asked the auditor or told the auditor, we expect this next audit to be in place on time. So the board is aware, and we're, we've done everything that we can to help with this situation. And just know as the LGC board that we are doing everything that we can. And thank you for this opportunity.
Ms. Harris.
I was wondering if either the finance director or the manager could tell us, was there some large expenditure that happened between 2018 and 2020 to cause you to need for the fund balance to go down so drastically? Did something particular happen in Bertie County?
Basically, it was having a balanced budget. I got it on. Oh, William Robinson, I'm Finance Director, William Robinson. Basically, the last couple of years, 19 and 18, there was a large amount of fund balance being appropriated to balance the budget. We were aware of this, and we've actually made changes in 20 and 21 and 22, which we used no fund balance to balance the budget for the last 2 years. So there was a trend that was seen to be taking effect that we wanted to get away from. So for 2 years, we've not used any fund balance to balance the budget.
Again, this is the treasurer before I get to the auditor. What is the pro forma, if the FEMA money had come in, what would be a uncertified pro forma, what your fund balance would have been with the 20 audit?
I think when I ran the numbers, I was looking at about 5.5%.
Okay. Auditor Wood.
So, Mr. Vaughn, I heard you say that you've been looking at your budget for the last 5 years, and I'm not sure, and sort of coming up with your budget for the next year, I'm not real sure that's the way to go about it. What you should be looking at is, what does it take to run your county today? And that's with looking at really hard numbers on what you're putting out there and staff you need. People are just continuing, revenue's going down, and people just cut just to cut, but they're not really looking at it strategically. So I'm not so sure that the way y'all are going about your budgeting, the law, GS 159, says your departments should come in with their budget and justify why they need what they need. If I've got 15 policemen, then this is the hours they're working, this is the number of hours I need, versus people continuing to have the same salaries year after year after year. So if you got back to how GS 159 tells you to budget, you might find your budget taking care of itself in a lot of ways. Second thing I would say to the chairman of the board of commissioners is that I assume you have a contract with your auditor. And I just don't understand why y'all are not, when the auditor misses their deadlines and it's not your fault, why you're not getting money back. And that'll start to make them reassess what they're doing. Their auditors, day in and day out, they have a contract with these local governments. They don't meet their deadline and nobody does anything about it.
Agreed.
Any other questions or?
So-
Susan?
Chairman Lee, what I would say is the most important thing that your board can do is to make sure that Mr. Robertson has everything that he needs to get this done timely, that you make sure that there are adequate resources there to provide for that, so that when those auditors are ready to start coming in to do field work, and you know, I have no idea that this has been a problem in the past here. I know it's been other places. When your auditor, when you schedule field work for your auditor, make sure that Mr. Robertson has what he needs so he can be ready on that field work date with what he needs to provide to the auditors. Because if he is not able to be ready and they come in and there's nothing there that they need to have, they're going to the next person on the list and you're going to the bottom. So make sure you have the resources in your finance area to do what you need to do so that you can get these statements and this audit done on time.
They indicated the problems were with the audit.
Chairwoman Lee, this is the treasurer. What is your goal a year from now as far as your fund balance as a percentage?
It would be lovely for it to be, we have a counting policy for it to be at 10%, and it would be lovely for it to be at that, but that might be difficult. We have received some of our reimbursements for the FEMA that we were waiting on, so that will help. We have cut back the budget. We've, we have done everything at this point that we can, but I would love to see it at 10%.
Thank you.
This is State Auditor Beth Wood. I'm just going to say, if you're not budgeting in accordance with GS 159, I am not sure you're doing everything that you possibly can. You haven't had your budget, your department heads give you what they need and justify what they need, and you understand it well enough to know it's true or not true, then I'm not sure you're doing everything you can.
Ms. Woods, this is Juan Vaughn, Bertie County Manager. Our department heads do that.
So you've gone behind them and confirmed that they really do need what they need, and they put it in man hours and metrics that you understand that you could call foul when it's not.
Absolutely.
I'm wanting to see that.
Okay.
She wants to see that, so.
I do. I want to see what your department heads have given you and their justification. Okay. You say you've done it, and absolutely, I want to see it.
Okay. Yes, that can be provided. Yes, and that was not stated initially because I was going off of one of your questions. The question under number 2 was what financial information does the board receive? And so I stated the financial piece that they receive. But yes, the department heads absolutely provide justification for their request, and that can be shared with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just an anecdotal question for Bertie County. This is the treasurer. I suspect your largest employer in Bertie County is the state of North Carolina.
Outside of Purdue, yes, sir.
So it's Purdue, the Department of Corrections, then the school system?
And Avoca.
Okay, right. Okay. Chairwoman, we thank you and your staff for presenting. Thank you for volunteering. That your board is extremely familiar with what needs to happen here. I want to remind you, there's a community to the west of you, a Husky, that was in a similar situation 5 or 6 years ago, and through good governance and more competence and more transparency and discipline and the ability to make really tough decisions, they're not on this list anymore. So I just want to let you know there are some great examples that you can, people who would love to, who have ideas that are transportable to you that might help you through this process. And I'm sure that they would, their door, their mind, and their hearts would be open. It's not like Apple Computers. It's not like Apple Computers said they're going to relocate their headquarters to a Hosky, and that's what made everything better. Nothing's been relocated to a Hosky. They just did it with good old-fashioned hard work.
They did. And one other thing, Mr. Vaughn and Chairman Lee,
Yes.
we had, when we talked in August, after we got your report, one of the things that we suggested, Ms. Lee, is that you enhance your county fund balance policy. It's got 10% in it, but it needs to have some teeth if you're not at 10%. What is the board going to do when the fund balance isn't at 10%? And you need to make a commitment as a board to take the action that you need to take to get back to 10%, whether it's raising additional revenues or cutting specific expenditures that you agree as a board that you're going to manage to that fund balance policy, and that you're going to commit to it and you're going to make hard decisions so that you get there. And with just saying it's going to be 10%, without any consequences, if it's not, it will not do you as much good as it could.
Thank you.
So
Yes, I believe the board as it is now, the five of us have a strong conviction of raising it to that 10% and keeping it there. But thank you for your suggestion.
Well, we can send you, if we have not already, we may have just sent some sample fund balance policies to Mr. Vaughn. Did we send those? We did. So I would advise y'all to look at those. Look at those. We'll be glad to help you with that language.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bertie County. And what Susan was just saying is instead of all this being verbal, and go ahead and put it as a matter of board policies, these milestones that need to be hit. And if the milestone's not hit here, then you go in this direction. And if it's not hit, then go in this direction. So firm and concrete things, and that'll send a strong message to us that you're serious about this. And ultimately, when you have success in turning this around, it'll send a strong message to the rating agencies that of how serious you were about this. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Edgecombe County.
Thank you, Bertie County. Next county is Hyde County.
Oh, Hyde County.
Their audit has been late, starting with 2015, with the exception of 2017, which was reasonably on time. The 2020 audit was received July 27th, 2021. Various storms have affected the county, including Dorian, Florence, and Finance has devoted significant amounts of time, particularly in the last 2 years, to disaster recovery, which has slowed down the account reconciliations and closeout each year. On the phone, we have Chris Noble, the county manager, Corinne Gibbs, the finance officer, Clint Berry, the utilities director, Julia Cahoon, the account specialist, and board members Earl Pugh and Randall Matthews. Also, just before the meeting today, I received an email from another board member, Goldie Thompson, which I will share with commission members after the meeting. So, Hyde County, I will turn it over to you for a brief discussion of your answers to the questions that were provided.
I have Mr. Berry, Sharon, and I'm working on the others. I don't see Ms. Gibbs, Mr. Pugh, or Ms. Calhoun. I've got Mr. Noble about to be, Mr. Noble's now available. Is now available.
Chris, can you hear us? Is anyone from Hyde County available to address the questions?
Mr. Berry was available. He was, that was the feedback we were getting, so I know he was there, or was there.
Yes, I'm here if you can hear me.
Yes. You have the floor.
I'm just the utilities director for our county, and I was here just to maybe for some assistance of the one question on here regarding our utilities department. I think Chris Noble, our county manager, should be on here. I'm not sure if maybe they're having some technical difficulties, but to address the one question that was on here for me regarding the utilities department, to be honest with you, I've been the utilities director here for 29 years, and I'm kind of ashamed to even be in this meeting, to be honest. I'm sorry I'm even here, and it really boils down to my utility being a small utility, and we have a small budget. And in this particular fiscal year of this question, we had a major water leak that was unbudgeted for, and it costed us about $130,000. That was unbudgeted. My budget's only $1.6 billion, so it was a huge deal for us to get that repaired, and it was unbudgeted for, and I think that's why it threw my department in this question list.
I'm sorry, can you hear us now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize, and Clea, I appreciate you picking up that you're picking up that presentation. We are all together in one room except for Mr. Berry, and I had a technical glitch and I could not unmute. So now that you can hear us, I was wondering if we could start again. And when we come to the issue about the utilities rate covenant, then we can go back into it, because I'd really like to give you some context. So I am Chris Noble. I'm the Hyde County manager, and we're here with our finance officer, Ms. Corinne Gibbs, our accounting specialist, Ms. Julia Cahoon, chairman of our board, Mr. Earl Pugh, and our Fairfield commissioner, Mr. Ben Simmons. We also have Mr. Clint Berry on the line. And I apologize, we're using some new equipment, and I thought I knew how to use it, and I didn't, so lesson learned. We are honored to be in front of you all. I've read your name so many times, and now to be in front of you, it's a real honor, and we appreciate your interest and your guidance. And with that, we'll start with our current status of our FY 2020 audit, which was due January 2021. We did submit our audit as of July 27th, 2021. Specific reasons for delay in completing our 2020 audit. Hyde County, as you know, like many coastal counties in North Carolina, we've experienced an increase over the last 10 years in the frequency of severe storms. We suffered damage during Matthew in 2016, Florence in 2018, most significantly in Dorian in 2019. That was a really terrible storm. And then Isaias in 2020. If you look at a map, you'll see we do jut out there, and unfortunately we take our a larger share of the hits of those storms. Dorian was definitely the most devastating. I believe 85% of all our structures on Ocracoke Island flooded during Dorian. And it has been a significant challenge in recovery, but I feel like we have done a great job for our people, getting folks back, making their lives whole again. The state and Hyde County, along with many of our coastal county friends, have responded by increasing our capacity for response and recovery. It's been the message in the state government, and the Hyde County is going along with that message of increasing the capacity for response and recovery. But that does not just mean focusing on critical infrastructure improvements, but also we found out that it means increasing our staff capacity to address the additional work that's necessary to respond to and recover from natural disasters. It's become very evident since Hurricane Matthew and other FEMA declared storms, since that recovery will mean a great deal more work and a great more staff time to meet those demands that are required by processing our federal and state reimbursement and reporting requirements, while we also keep the local government running. So we're, working really hard with FEMA and state recovery and response groups to get back on our feet, but the ball always has to keep rolling in regard to normal governmental operations. And that's been challenging. I know in 2010, the county did a staff reduction, and they took the staff down to the bare bones. And it worked fine for normal government operations, but when you have an event like a hurricane and you're down to a bare bones staff, you don't have the capacity that you need. And I think we've learned that over the last 10 years. Now, Hyde County, until recently, had a 2-person finance staff, and they're always required to report to our emergency operations center during a hurricane. And they support the recovery effort throughout the duration of the entire recovery period. Our finance officer, she's very knowledgeable and she's very skilled in serving as our disaster recovery specialist, namely through some pretty hard hits we took and some lessons we learned during Irene in 2011, when we almost didn't receive our FEMA reimbursements, and that would have been detrimental to our finances. Now, our finance officer has proven successful in our FEMA reimbursements for public assistance, also state and foundational funding, because all that flooded in, especially after Dorian. However, it has been too great of a challenge to manage all of our regular aspects of governmental accounting, most importantly, compliance and audit, while we're also meeting the demands of recovery with this limited staff capacity. So what is the current status of our 2021? We have been working with our auditor, and our auditor has indicated to us, and that would be Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams, that our 2021 audit is in its preliminary stages and that it should be on target, but we may use the November grace period. That's his exact words. We should be on target, but we may, and if I could say probably, we'll use the November grace period. Changes that we have made to ensure that we are able to catch up and keep up. We have increased our staffing capacity since Dorian. The addition of a grant administrator and an accounting specialist has increased our internal capacity to face those challenges of response and recovery to natural disaster, while we can also maintain compliance in regard to government accounting, including but not limited to auditing. In addition, Hyde County has purchased and is in the process of implementing a state-of-the-art cloud-based financial accounting software. Our current financial software is extremely outdated. It's still a green screen, and up until a few years ago, we were printing out on big green and white lined paper. It has been purchased, and it was a significant investment, but we will move our current processes, paper-based processes, into a cloud-based platform where information can readily be accessed and shared with our staff, our board members, our auditors, and outside agencies like the LGC. Now, the amount of time and staffing to provide reporting needed to complete audit functions would be reduced, and hopefully we can increase the speed of our audits. Currently, reports with our Harris software can take hours, if not days, and they're often generated in formats that must be then hand-keyed into Excel spreadsheets in order to be shared with outside agencies. The new financial accounting system is being tailored for Hyde County to meet our needs after a natural disaster by handling response and recovery payroll in a manner that will make the FEMA PA reimbursement and record keeping faster and much more efficient. Also, the system is cloud-based and it'll be accessible by our staff in the Emergency Operations Center, in the field, or from home as the uncertainty of COVID pandemic continues to affect our local government staffing. Hyde County has also hired a lead for North Carolina fellow through a partnership with the UNC School of Government, and this fellow will add to our capacity. She is focused on supporting the staff with the implementation of our new software, as it will affect every department and every aspect of local government accounting moving forward in Hyde County. Corrective actions that have been identified in this and other correspondence with LGC are ongoing. Hiring the additional staff needed to upgrade capacity and purchasing our new software system represent major investments to Hyde County. Our impediments have been carefully analyzed, our corrective action plan has been crafted, and we have made financial commitments to ensure that our regular audit reporting is caught up and our regular reporting schedule is maintained. The purchase of the financial software system has been needed for many years, but it's been delayed due to the needed purchase and implementation of a new tax software. Over the last 2 years, Hyde County has invested in the Farragut tax software, and we have improved our tax collection rate tremendously. The focus on implementation of the tax software delayed the purchase and implementation of financial software. We are well on our way. Our corrective actions will take time to take effect, and they are ongoing, and our limited staff, we also, I'm so sorry, I got tongue-tied. Our corrective action will take time to take effect, and it's ongoing while our limited staff still supports the community of Ocracoke in its recovery from Dorian, which is also working through challenges of COVID. Now, both Dorian and COVID poured millions of dollars into Hyde County in the form of grant funding, and administering these funds and rebuilding our economy has also added on to the workload to a few staff that are challenged to do well. But we'll continue to work to implement our corrective action plan, and we believe that with the additional staff, the restructuring of our operations and implementation of our new finance technology, we are on the road to regularity in audit reporting and better fund management. In regard to our board, is the board aware of the county's pattern of late audits and significant delays? Yes, the board is aware of our audits being late and other financial weaknesses, and they have implemented a corrective action plan, as we've already discussed in the last few minutes. Has the board offered any additional resources to the finance officer to make sure that this happens in a more timely manner? Yes, the board has dedicated financial resources and approved the creation and hiring of new staff positions, including the grant administrator, the accounting specialist, and the lead forensic fellow to increase capacity. And also they've dedicated a significant amount to purchase the OpenGov software platform I've highlighted. Is the board aware of the consequences of such delays? The board is aware of the consequences of audit delays and the impacts to our ability to have debt approved. The board and our staff take financial health and our responsibilities to our citizens very seriously, and we believe we're making the improvements that we need to correct the deficiencies. What financial information has the board been receiving to inform its decisions? The board is active during the budgeting process, and we can utilize reports from existing software system, even though they're very insufficient and they're very hard to interpret. This has been recognized as a deficiency, and that's one of the key reasons that we are implementing the new software system. So our board, our staff, our citizenry will all have this information in real time, cloud-based, and accessible to anybody that needs it. Our audit being delivered is reassuring, and we really desire a regular audit schedule coupled with monthly reports that this new system is going to be able to produce. We've already seen a huge improvement in our tax collections with the implementation of the tax software, and we feel like we're going to feel those same improvements with the implementation of our new finance software. We are challenged. Many of you that know anything about Hyde County, you'll know that we do have significant challenges in regard to our challenges to keep up our financial records and our audits. The challenge is meeting the needs of our communities before, during, and after storms. Revenue generation is really challenging for us, of course, but then it's exacerbated by natural disasters when the tax base is lost and tourism dollars are lost due to our storm evacuations. Workforce has been challenging. That's partly due to our rural nature and our very small talent pool, but mostly due to COVID over the last 2 years. The board, and I'll say too, I lost a great deal of staff the year during and a year after Dorian because it was just really stressful working through that, honestly. The board has made significant investments and salary increases in our last budget. They specifically implemented a year's service increase for employees in this fiscal year to try to attract and retain the staff that we have, and they've invested in the software and the new positions. What challenges do we face outside of our finances? Well, I think you all know we're a small rural county. We struggle with job creation, declining population, aging population, and other negative demographic trends, and that affects our ability to generate revenue. The increase in frequency of hurricanes deter major investments by any kind of industry. Nobody wants to be located in the floodplain, and that makes it really hard to attract industry. But we're not giving up, and we are working hard to enhance the industries that are currently viable, including agriculture, forestry, commercial fishing, and tourism. And we are investing all that we can in resiliency, not just in water and flood control, but in our internal operations. And so I would, in the questions you all sent us for the responses today, it didn't ask us a great deal in regard to the utilities. I asked our public utilities director to be here. Now he's working right now with DEQ and the VUR, and there were some questions within the first letter you sent and asked for a response in regard to our rate covenant. So we're happy to talk about that, and we're happy to answer any questions and take any advice you have for us.
Thank you, Ms. Noble. Now today was specifically to talk about the late audits. We do still need you to respond to the letter about the rate covenants. But if you would respond to that in writing back to Cullen, we'd appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
So are there any questions by the commission members or staff?
Chris, you said that, this is Susan McCullen. You said that you had purchased a cloud-based software system. What system was that?
Ms. McCullen, we are so happy to tell you that we invested in the OpenGov finance software. We are so excited. We're about halfway through the process. I have the timetable in front of me because I thought you might be interested in that. We are working on our chart of accounts right now, is due to be completed within the next month. Our core financials are to be completed in November, our extended financials in December. We are working on our HR piece. That will be after that, and the whole project should be going by August of 2022, and we should be done, staff trained, and utilizing it. We've had one portion of the software to go live so far, but that's just our citizen services portal. We're still working through the chart of accounts and listening to your advice to earlier, County, and I think it was Pender talking about the mistakes that they didn't see ahead of time with the implementation of their tax. We have got all our department heads are at the table in this implementation already. They're reviewing the chart of accounts and approving it. We're working with them in the OpenGov team, and we're really impressed, and it gives us a lot of hope for the future that we're going to have the tools we need.
Yeah, that is in Chris's word, a great move to resiliency, to get something that is cloud-based and can be accessed remotely. How long is the League of the NC Fellow going to be there?
Yes, ma'am. We have our lead fellow for a full year, and I've already enjoyed her and benefited from her so much that I would definitely be up for continuing that program with another fellow continually. She's been a great help, and the primary purpose to have her on board, because there is so much outreach to our department heads and staff, is that she'll be able to help us with that outreach and training to our department heads and staff, be a liaison. But I will tell you, my IT director is really managing the project, but she's picking up a lot of the work and helping us through.
Okay. Now, are the county's bank recons current now?
I'm going to defer to my account specialist and my finance officer.
This is Karen Gibson, Finance Director with Hyde County. Our account recons are getting caught up. They should be completely caught up within the next 3 to 4 weeks. And that's been a great asset for the board to let us hire an accounting specialist. That's really helped us get caught up on a lot of things.
Okay. When you say they're caught up, are you tying them to your general ledger?
Yes, that's what we're doing right this second. That should be fully completed.
In 3 to 4 weeks?
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else? I'm sorry, you were saying something.
I did have, you mentioned that you had increased your tax rates. How much did your tax rates, collection rates increase with the new system, with the new tax system?
We're excited to talk about that too, because when we first started, we were I believe we had the lowest collection rate in the state of 92 and 93. Corinne's looking to give you the exact number. Let her do that.
In 2018, it was at 93.6%, and as of 2019, with the implementation of various system, it went up to 96.18.
Mm-hmm. That's the number I've got. Okay, 96.18. Okay.
And we're not stopping there. We're dedicated to go right on up. We want to rival Dare County with collection rate.
Yeah. How much is what's your tax dollar? What's a penny on your tax dollar?
Penny on tax dollar, 79.5.
Yes.
79.5, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's all I got.
Anybody else? Thank you so much, Hyde County.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. It was a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you, Ms. Noble.
Go ahead.
Next up is Edgecombe County. We have Board Chair Leonard Wiggins, County Manager Eric Evans, Assistant County Manager Natalie Bess, and Finance Officer Catherine Walters. Their audits have been laid back to 2015 with the exception of 2017, which was on time. 2020 audit is not yet in. Delays have been caused by a variety of issues, including lack of information on a debt refunding back in 2015. And I remember that was a very complex debt transaction. It took a while to figure all the entries out for that. Hurricane Matthew flooded the county offices the year it hit, and there were delays in actuarial reports and other information needed to complete the audit, as well as delays in account reconciliations. In particular, in 2019, accounts weren't reconciled. Some transactions were not recorded for the entire year until after the end of the fiscal year, particularly with interfund transactions and trust and agency accounts. The county has changed auditors for 2020 and hired its previous audit firm to help with the bookkeeping. So I'll turn it over to the county staff and board representatives to briefly go through the information we requested, and then we'll turn it over to the commission members for questions.
Sure. Good afternoon. This is Eric Evans, County Manager. I do want to make one correction. Chairman Leonard Wiggins was not able to be here today. We do have Commissioner Billy Wooten in the room with us. He is the chairman of our board's budget committee. Again, good afternoon. I will just simply go through the response to the questions that you sent to us. Regarding our FY20 audit, we're currently working with Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams. This is their first year of doing our audit. We are expecting the FY20 audit to be complete by September the 30th. Regarding the reasons for our significant delay, the current status of our audit is the legacy of previously delayed audits, which resulted from primarily staff turnover and changes in audit firms. Our goal has been to successfully shorten the delay in order to position us to deliver a timely audit. The culminating factors for our late audit began in 2015 when the audit firm who had worked with the county for many years stopped doing county audits due to compliance changes and their increased complexity. We found the pools of firms at that time who were still interested in doing county audits to be fairly shallow, and those who were willing had very full plates. We did choose at that time Martin Starnes and Associates, who performed our audit for 2 years. We again solicited proposals from firms in 2017 and selected Carriggs and Ingram, who performed our audits for FY18 and 19. Carriggs and Ingram has moved into a consultative role with the county, and we have contracted with Thompson, Price, Scott, and Adams. In 2016, we lost our long tenured experienced finance director who relocated, but we struggled to find an experienced finance professional for a little over a year. We're certainly happy to have and glad to have Ms. Catherine Walters now as our finance director. In the last 2 years, we've had other turnover in key positions in finance, including accounts receivable, payroll, and more recently, our assistant finance director. All of this was in the midst of additional pressure being placed on the financial management capacity of the county, which I'll discuss further in just a moment. Our current auditor has been working remotely due to COVID on the FY20 audit. Therefore, the sharing of information from us to them has been primarily through electronic means. And as you would imagine, the scanning of volumes of documents is tedious and time consuming for our staff. And so the FY20 audit has not been completed as early as we had expected. The current status of the FY21 audit, which is due October 31st. While completing the FY20 audit, our staff is working with our consultants and the auditor to prepare for the start of FY21 audit. As much as can be prepared and shared has been already. We expect to be able to complete FY21 audit by January 31st of 2022. Regarding the changes that have been made to ensure our future audits are timely, first, we have added a grant administrator / accountant position to the finance department. He began in December of 2020. The primary function of this position is to track grant projects as well as to assist with account reconciliations and serve as backup for other key functions in the finance department. Our finance director has also realigned some duties among her staff for more efficiency while also maintaining proper separation of duties. We have, as mentioned, we have contracted with Carriggs and Ingram, our previous auditor, to provide consultative services. They are working with our finance director and staff to address key improvements needed in our financial management, as well as to assist in preparing our financial statements for FY20 and FY21 audit. The board is aware of the status of our audits. In addition to periodic updates to the full board, our staff meets with the budget committee that's made up of 3 of our commissioners regularly to give more detailed updates, as well as to consult with them on budgetary and other financial decisions of the county. The committee is comprised of 3 commissioners, as I mentioned, and is appointed by our chairman. Our board, regarding additional resources, the board is off for county finance. Yes, our board approved the addition of the grant administrator accountant position, as I mentioned, in our finance department. They also approved the contract with Carriggs and Ingram to provide consultative services with financial management and preparation of our financial statements. Yes, the board is aware of the consequences of such delays, including the unlikely approval of debt by the commission. They certainly take this very seriously. They have been monitoring our progress very closely. The financial information that's provided to our board does receive monthly financial updates at their monthly commissioners meetings. And in light of our late audits, the board has made relatively conservative budgetary decisions, realizing that at that moment, we're making budget decisions that are not based on a final and completed audit. Some of the challenges that we're facing that impact the ability to keep these financial records up to date, we see that there's still a need to build a pool of talent and experience in local government finance. As we've had turnover in the finance department, we find few applicants who have the experience and training that we need. Other challenges that we have faced, the demands of our finance department are growing. Edgecombe County's increased economic activity has added complex financial transactions and more grant projects to manage. Also, other grant projects like Hurricane Matthew flood recovery, the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and now the American Rescue Plan funds have added millions of dollars to manage, along with the compliance and reporting that follows. These grants do provide for administrative costs that can be used to hire additional staff. However, it is difficult to find qualified candidates interested in time-limited grant-funded positions. So those are my responses to your questions, and certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Do any board members have questions for Edgecombe County?
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask, so what's the total number of employees in your finance office now?
We have 6 positions. 1 is currently vacant that we hope to be able to fill very soon.
And whose specific job is it to do reconciliations monthly?
Well, it is spread over a couple of staff people. Our assistant finance director, which currently is vacant, had the primary task of that. The grant administrator or accountant is assisting with bank reconciliations, but our finance director has been doing a lot of that since we passed some turnover.
Follow. Any other questions? Thank you. Any from the phone from board members? None. Anson County.
All right, thank you, folks from Edgecombe. We'll go next to Anson County. We have on the meeting Jarvis Woodburn, the chair, Raymond Allen, the interim county manager, and David Cannon, the finance officer. Anson County's audits have been late since 2015. 2020 audit was received July the 15th, 2021. There has been significant staff turnover in 2020. The county lost both its finance officer and manager. They also had to deal with a ransomware attack, and they have been working on converting their accounting software for some number of years. Previous issues focused on the software and also not getting documents to the auditors on time. So I will turn it over now to the folks from Anson County. If you could briefly go through the responses to the questions that were submitted to you.
Thank you very much. This is Ray Allen. I am the interim county manager here in Anson County and have been since June the 7th of this year, approximately 3 months. I'm a retired local government manager and have, since my retirement, I serve in an interim capacity for municipalities and counties. Also on the call with me is our Board of Commissioners Chairman, Jarvis Woodburn, and our Finance Director, David Cannon. I want to assure the Local Government Commission that the county is moving very quickly to try to improve the operations of our finance department. And I want to provide some background information and update on the changes we've made just in the past 3 months. And then we're going to be providing some responses to the specific questions that you had. Both Mr. Cannon and Chairman Woodburn are going to be speaking as well. The county does have a history of having problems within the finance department. We have had a lack of stability in the staffing of the finance director and positions within the finance department. We do want to assure you, however, that the county's financial condition is stable. The county budgets revenues very conservatively, and we have sufficient reserves and fund balances so that we can continue to meet all of our obligations in spite of these operational deficiencies which we are trying to correct. The county did experience a very difficult 2021. The county finance director left around February of this year to take a position with another county. The assistant finance director was placed in charge and was unable to keep up with the demands of the office, and she resigned from the county in July. In addition, the county experienced a ransomware attack at the end of April, and this attack has created operational difficulties for the last several months, as we're recovering from that. The malware attack did not compromise any financial information, but it did limit communications and access so that finances became very much more challenging during the audit this year. One other factor impacting the finance department was that the county transitioned to a new financial software. The county started utilizing Edgecombe's financial software at the start of fiscal year 2021. Unfortunately, the prior finance staff did not post entries correctly and had fallen behind both on payroll and revenue posting during the fiscal year. In addition, that staff did not complete a bank reconciliation for the entire 2021 fiscal year. These are issues that are being addressed by our current finance staff to ensure correct financial data as we go forward. The first major step that the county has taken to improve its financial operations was that we brought in David Cannon as the finance director in June. Mr. Cannon has over 30 years government finance experience. In his past positions, he's received the GFOA certificate for excellence in financial reporting and has been a part of upgrading 2 counties to a AAA bond rating. And I think this speaks to his background in finance and management. And now I'm going to ask Mr. Cannon, if he would, to talk about some of the specifics that were addressed in your letter.
Mr. Cannon, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Unmute. Well, thank you for this opportunity. As you have addressed and Mr. Allen has discussed, we do have some challenges in terms of our financial data based on the turnover in staffing. They had fallen behind in terms of the daily work, in terms of posting and doing the bank reconciliation. So we've attacked that very aggressively in terms of getting up to date in terms of getting all the payroll entries posted, getting the liabilities adjusted, getting those corrected. And I feel we should have the expense side of the data current and accurate here by the end of September. We're also working on the revenue side, whereas Mr. Allen mentioned that the prior staff, there were some double postings, there are some issues with ACH postings, and so we've got to go through that a little bit more. But through the board's approval, we look to bring in some outside assistance to help us catch this up and do our bank reconciliations. And ideally, our plan is to have that done by the end of October. I think once we get through the expenditures by the end of this month, we should be able to then start our preparations for our 21 audit. I think at that point, we can start pulling our adjusting entries, our year-end entries on the expense side while we work toward completing the revenue side. In terms of the questions from the letter, obviously our 20 audit has been complete. The audit was delayed, like Mr. Allen suggested, due to the turnover in staffing, inexperienced assistant finance director, and not being able to keep up with the daily work. As far as our fiscal year 21 audit, it's probably not expected to be completed by October 31st. I think our reasonable goal would be by December 31st to have all the information provided to the auditors and have them start to prepare the financial statements in the audit for 2021. As Mr. Allen, changes that the county's made, we were able to bring in a new finance technician. We were able to post for the assistant finance director, and we were very pleased to find three very qualified candidates. And we're looking to make an offer on a candidate who has experience here in the county, who is a local person, and we think will be a tremendous asset to the improvements of the finances here within the county. And so with these additional positions, with some outside assistance on the bank reconciliations, I think we can get caught up in terms of the 2021 audit. We've got some other things we still want to address and deal with from a policies procedure standpoint, but I think we can make progress with the additional help that the commissioners have allowed.
Any questions from board members or staff?
Mr. Treasurer, I think Chairman Woodburn has some remarks as well, if he may be permitted.
Sure. Chairman, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. As far as the board responsibilities are concerned, I would have to say that the full board is aware of the issue with our late audits, and it is a high level of concern. And we've been trying to get on top of this for a while, and we're asking questions, and it appears that we just wasn't getting the correct information or getting good information, because we were told repeatedly that audits were going to be done on time, which, as we see, they were not. The other thing that we're doing is, as already been mentioned, the board has committed wholeheartedly to the interim county manager, Mr. Allen, and the finance director, Mr. Cannon, that we will provide the necessary resources. They just let us know, and we will let them get that in place. And that they've already started. And there's a lot of things that has to be done in the finance department, but I believe Mr. Cannon is beginning to get a good handle on that. Yes, the board is fully aware of the impact being made with the audits. We have capital projects that we need to do that we're not able to do because we're not going to get local government commission approval because of this situation with audits, and that's why it is a top priority with us. And that's where we're in process of making the improvements in the finance department. And there has been, actually prior to Mr. Cannon, there was a very thorough monthly budget report that was being provided to the commissioners, but the ransomware attack interrupted that. And Mr. Cannon has just got it to where he has provided our first one at our meeting this month. It is very detailed, and I think with that, we'll be getting that every month, and that will definitely help us stay on top of our financial situation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sir.
Anson County, thank all of you for being here today, and appreciate your partnership that we're developing, LGC and the County Commission Association. So we look forward to your being successful in getting off the list.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go over to unit letters. Assume we're going to take these individually.
Yes. All right, so the first item up for consideration is City of Asheville. This is a water sewer revenue bond to take out some bans that the city had. The amount is not to exceed $40,500,000. They will be sold at a public sale, and they did receive a unit letter, and I'll turn it over to Susan to go over that as well as the city's response.
So I understand from the city that Tony McDowell is the finance director, Doug Whitman, the treasurer, Doug Carter, the president and managing director of the EC Associates, their financial advisor, as well as Andrew Carter, the director of DEC, are on the call.
I'm looking at Tony. Mr. McDowell is, and I'm looking at Tony.
So in March of 2021, we received a letter to the city of Asheville. We did not get their audited financial statements for 2020 until March 16th of 2021. We also, there were some findings in the compliance section that indicated that there were significant delays in year-end accounting and reporting process, and that the basic footnote schedules, those sorts of things that need to be provided to auditors are not provided, were not provided accurately or timely. And so that further delayed the audit. We received a letter from the town, from the city, I apologize, on March 30th. They had their reasons for the delay in reporting. There were significant turnovers in the finance department positions responsible for the reporting process. The city's controller left in August of 2020. The accounting supervisor, who was the interim controller, left in November of 2020. And then the CFO left in January of 2020. So the staff turnover, along with the need identified by the auditor to update and document policies and procedures associated with the year-round closeout process, led to the items noted by the city. The controller and the accounting supervisor have been hired, and the CFO position is currently filled on an interim basis. There have also been, having these positions filled, they've been able to provide information needed to the auditors and have begun to document their reconciliations and their year-end closeout process. After reading their response, which copied all of their board members, we felt that their response was satisfactory.
Any questions? Is anybody on the phone from Asheville?
Yes, sir. Mr. McDowell, the finance director, Mr. Whitman, the treasurer, Mr. Andrew Carter, the director of the EC Associates, are on with us.
Would one of you like to make any comments regarding what the staff has just presented?
Sure. This is Tony McDowell, the finance director. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I think the summary that staff provided definitely covers some of the issues we dealt with in late 2020, early 2021. We have taken steps to restaff, to staff back up since then. All of the positions that were mentioned in that letter are now permanently filled. We've also added an assistant finance director position that was previously focused on budget. We've rehired that position, and it's focused on accounting services. And the person in that role has a lot of experience working in local government finance and accounting. So we feel like we're well positioned to move forward and provide you all with the audit on a timely basis this year.
This is the treasurer. Just a quick question. I've gotten a call from some member of the media from that neck of the woods. Is the things that we're discussing here, has that been widely reported?
It was not widely reported. Of course, we reported this to City Council when the audit was presented back in, I think it was April of this year. We also have an audit committee that's a subcommittee of City Council and some outside appointees, and we presented the audit to them as well. So it was presented in a public forum. I don't think the news media picked up on it. I didn't get any questions about the audit from anyone here. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. All right. Any other questions?
You're welcome.
Staff's making a recommendation for approval.
Yes.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Any further discussion to accept staff's recommendation regarding the city of Asheville? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Did Auditor Wood come back?
Auditor Wood, are you with us?
Auditor Wood left the meeting. She's going to attempt to call in. Secretary Penny?
Aye. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Butler's absent right now. Mayor Paget?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
Treasurer?
Aye.
Okay, that's 6. That's enough.
All right. Thank you. Asheville, thank you for joining us. And appreciate you working on all these matters. So I know it's not comfortable, but thank you for doing it. Now, City of Brevard.
Okay. All right, next up, City of Brevard has a $2,350,000 installment purchase private placement contract that they are seeking approval for construction of a community center building. They have previously agreed, or rather the council has already approved a 2-cent tax rate increase to cover the debt service. They did get a unit letter, which Susan will review with staff.
Okay, on February 19th, we sent a letter to the city of Brevard concerning a couple of items related to its financial condition. We were concerned that their fund balance available for appropriation compared to their total expenditures was low compared to comparable units. In 2020, comparable units had a fund balance available of 74% on average. The towns had decreased over 3 years to 29%. So they were significantly less than the average and below 50% of the average. We also had noticed a potential financial weakness in the water and sewer fund. They had a quick ratio of less than 1 at 0.63, and that had decreased from 0.9 in 2018 to 0.63 by 2020, so it's not a good trend. The town the city gave a very extensive response that is included in your packet. They have done very specific things to improve their property tax collections. They adopted a more lean budget and have done some other things that have that we felt would get the city in a good direction. So we were satisfied with the city response.
Staff has recommended approval.
We've heard staff's recommendation to approve the city of Brevard. Is anybody from the city of Brevard on the phone?
Yes, there should.
Oh, yes.
Finance director is on the phone, Mr. Treasurer.
Sorry about that.
Yes, Jim Patlin, the finance officer, is on the phone.
And Tom Whitlock, he's on, okay.
Okay, Jim and Tom, this is the state treasurer Falwell. Is there anything you'd like to add to staff's recommendation to approve your borrowing?
Mr. Batlin, this me telling you.
Mr. Patlin, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
If anyone from Brevard is speaking, we can't hear you.
Okay, Jim Fatlin, City Manager and Finance Director. Now you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to share with the commission that we collect our own property taxes. We started 3 years ago, and this year is our best ever. We've collected 72% of our tax levy at the end of August 31st, which has definitely helped out our cash flow. And then last year, you approved a loan of $1.3 million. We have paid off that loan and made $600,000 profit, plus paid back the general fund $577.5, which will improve the fund balance for this year. And then our sales tax collections are doing very well also.
This is the treasurer. Did you say you're only collecting 72% of your property taxes?
Oh, no, we collected 99.8% last year. I'm just saying that we sent out tax bills, and by August 31st of this year, we had collected 72% of our money because we offer a 2% discount. So we've got cash flow earlier than we used to have in prior years. So that's excellent news.
You're not earning 2% of the stiff.
No, we do a 2% discount, so people pay their taxes early. And so, like I said earlier, we collected $3.9 million of our $5.5 million tax levy this year earlier. So it's worked out really well by doing your own tax collections.
What I was saying was you're not earning 2% in the stiff program, so that's fine. Lost in translation. All right, we have a recommendation for the city of Brevard for any further discussion. Hearing none, I'll accept the motion.
Move approval.
Okay. I move approval by Secretary Marshall. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Philbeck, if that's okay. Just to get it on record. Motion second being made. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, call the roll.
That was Marshall, Philbeck, Auditor Wood. Did you join us? Secretary Penny?
I'm here. Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Butler's temporarily absent. Mayor Paget?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Treasurer?
Aye.
Thank you. 6-0. Motion carried.
Our next presenter is the Castle County.
Castle County is asking for approval of a refunding with an installment purchase contract of $3,380,000. This will have a net present value savings of $128,900, which is 3.93% essentially of the refunded balance. They did get a unit letter, which Susan will go over. They don't anticipate any tax increase to service this debt.
So Castle County is on our unit assistance list for a late audit for failing to reconcile balance sheet accounts adequately. And because their solid waste fund reported a deficit unrestricted net position. So we sent them a unit letter, and they responded back. We sent them a letter in July, and July 28th they responded back, and we the issues that they responded back to were that the balance sheet accounts were not adequately reconciled because they had been going through a major software transition that was very challenging for their staff because of no on-site training for COVID. There was a shift of staffing throughout the department during that time as well, with the retirement of a veteran finance officer, the appointment of a new finance director, as well as finance restructuring. Key strategic duties were also and then there was some audit findings and additional training that was currently taking place for new finance staff. The newly appointed finance director and the newly hired deputy finance director are scheduled for finance classes at School of Government to increase their knowledge base. And the deputy finance director has been assigned reconciliation of the balance sheet account.
Someone on the phone from Caswell?
If Mr. Miller, the
Yes,
county
Mr. Treasurer.
Welcome, and would you like to add anything else to staff's comments where they're recommending approval?
No, we would just like to thank the LGC for your consideration today. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but if the recommendations for approval, we're happy to let that go.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Harris.
I wanted to find out, did you have any citizens complain about that large increase? Solid waste fee went from $60 to $113.
So we've had a few people call, and I think it's easy enough for me to remind them that we didn't get a lot of complaints when the board reduced the solid waste fee from $84 to $44 in 2017. I think, reminding citizens that there was a very large reduction and that current levels are probably where it should have been all along, helps ease that pain a little bit for them.
My main concern were your senior citizens. I would think that would be a great big hit for someone who's living off the same amount every month. Did you do anything special for that age group? Or everybody got that same increase?
Well, our tax department does, or our fees are discounted for senior citizens. But other than that, no, they pay the fees at par per household.
That's annual. That's an annual amount, isn't it?
That is an annual amount. That's correct.
Yes.
I feel better, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Treasurer.
Yes, ma'am.
State Auditor Beth Wood. I have a question for staff and the county. There's a lot of training going on and a lot of new people. And so what is the LGC or the county doing to ensure that the books stay up to date, that the commissioners have the information they need, that the reconciliations are being done? What's being done during this time of all this training to make sure the books don't fall apart. The finances don't fall apart.
Well, our finance staff is working with the auditors currently to maintain the books. They're also attending the training. We've also, with the School of Government, we've also enlisted Munis to conduct some training as well. There's a lot of oversight from the county manager's position of the finance department. Currently, we meet on a daily basis, and I get relevant updates on a daily basis on how the training's going, what the staff's doing, how the reconciliations are going, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of oversight in the department currently.
I'm not sure I would consider the county manager a lot of oversight. Does the county manager have the background to oversee account reconciliations, bank reconciliations, posting to the general ledger and making sure that that's being done well? I mean, does the county manager have that background?
Well, you know, we hire the auditors to provide us an additional level of background in those areas. We also have ex-finance.
I'm not sure that your auditors can do that. Your auditors cannot help you keep your books and then turn around and audit them. So,
Right. But we also have ex-finance staff, not county finance staff, but collegiate finance staff on the board, serving on the Board of Commissioners. And they're quick to check the finance department on a routine basis.
Define that for me. Is there somebody coming in and overseeing or checking behind, or what do you mean they're quick to check?
They're quick to come in and ask finance staff specific questions. They are very involved in the discussions when we discuss anything involving the audit or the finances of the county. Just at the past Board of Commissioners meeting, this commissioner made the statement that he had came in and asked the finance department some trick questions, and they were very quick to answer, and he was very impressed with their knowledge thus far.
Susan, help me here. Give me some reassurances that, because again, I read through all the training that's going on. I've read through all the new people, the inexperienced. I'm not comfortable that you're not going to end up with a bad financial statement audit, or at least some findings next go around, which means a whole year of general ledger transactions, reconciliations, bank reconciliations not being done well.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, there is a lot of training there that is apparently needed. We will reach out. And I have David, have y'all talked with the county? Okay, we will reach out. We'll do a unit visit with the county rather. I can't speak to that, but we can do that. I would like to ask a question about your current year's audit. Has the field work for the 2021 audit started yet?
Yes, it has. We started working with the auditors on that process.
So when are they coming in?
I was going to ask, have the financial statements been done?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
We have the 2020. Has the field work for 2021 started?
We have begun the process to do.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, you broke up. I didn't understand the question.
The question is, has the financial statement been prepared for 2021?
No, they have not.
I share your concern, Auditor Wood. We'll reach out to the county.
Reach out how?
We'll do a unit visit.
I'm getting ready to approve a bond sale for a unit that doesn't even have their 2021 financials done, and not sure that the staff that's there can work on that plus the 2022 financial information. I mean, we're 2 months into the new year. So I'm real hesitant to approve a loan bond sales for a unit whose financials are in such disarray, or at least a question.
I hear you and I understand. I'm going to point out this is a refunding. No new debt, right? No new debt. But I just want to point that out.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
In the car, I don't have my book in front of me, so if it's a refunding, I'm good.
Okay.
All right. Staff's recommended approval. Alder Wood, would you like to make a motion for this refunding?
Sure. So moved.
I'll second that.
I can do about anything when she's in the car. Motion and second. Any further discussion? She'll be back though. All those in favor, clerk will call the roll.
Secretary Marshall? Aye. Secretary Penny?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Butler? Aye. Mr. Philbeck? Treasurer Follow?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Columbus County.
All right, Columbus County is asking for a modification of installment financing that was approved by the commission back in November of 2019. It was held by First Bank at a 1.99% interest rate. Due to delayed construction, the county is seeking approval to extend the final maturity on that, which it was to have matured October 1st, 2021 to April 2nd, 2022. And also reducing the interest rate from the 1.99 to 1.48. This will allow additional time to get the school project finished and facilitate the long-term takeout by USDA. I'm assuming will come before us before April 2nd of 2022. No, it won't because it's USDA. Never mind. I knew as soon as I said that I was wrong. So the county did get a unit letter, which the commission members saw earlier this year, the different debt approval. I'll turn it over to Susan to review that and any staff from the county that's on the line.
Yeah. Eddie Madden, the county manager. Gail Edwards, the senior advisor to the manager. Amanda Prince. Heather Woody, the assistant finance director. And Dr. Mark Richard, the superintendent to Whiteville City Schools. Any of those folks?
Mr. Madden is with us, Ms. Woody, Mr. Dr. Witcher.
Okay. Okay.
Columbus County, do you have anything to add to the staff's report and their positive recommendation to approve this?
This is Eddie Madden. Just want to express our appreciation for your consideration of the time extension.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Eddie, this is Paul Butler. How are you doing?
Doing great. How are you, Mr. Butler?
Eddie, you still have two school systems there, the Whiteville City School System and Columbus County.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Does Whiteville participate in, the Whiteville City unit participate in this, or is it all county?
Yes, sir. Whiteville City Schools. Dr. Wichard is on the line, and I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
My question though, Eddie, was do they do any supplemental tax to service this debt?
No,
City
no,
unit?
no, sir.
It's all done by the county.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Eddie.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Butler, would you like to announce that you're a resident of Columbus County? And
I'm not a resident of Columbus County.
okay, I'm sorry. You're in Whiteville.
No, I'm at White Lake.
Oh,
But I know Mr. Madden. He's actually.
okay. I got my white Falls and Spring Lake and Spring Hope. And,
Mr. Madden is a great asset that's come to Columbus County.
okay. All right.
But it's one of the few places left where we have two school systems.
13 of them. So, anyway, thank you. My mistake. Total my mistake. With that, would you like to make a motion to
I
approve?
certainly would. I motion that we approve it.
Right, here's a second. Any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
All right, Columbus County Auditor Wood.
Aye.
Secretary Marshall. Aye. Secretary Penny.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Paget. Thank you. Mayor Paget. Thank you. Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Thank you. Treasurer Follen.
Aye.
Thank you.
Columbus County, before you leave, I should have said this for the rest of them, but as you already know, you have a $42 million unfunded healthcare liability in Columbus County. So if Columbus County wins the lottery or anything you can do to start defeasing that, obviously would help enormously as going forward as far as credit ratings are concerned. So thank you for joining us today, Columbus County.
All right, the last unit letter item is City of Mount Holly for a $13,555,000 GO bond for Parks and Recreation. This will provide projects including acquisition, construction and improvement of facilities, acquisition of land for current and future projects, and development of greenways and pedestrian crossings. Anticipating a tax increase of up to 7.5 cents to fund this debt, and the city did receive a unit letter, which Susan will review.
I knew this. You have the floor.
In May, we sent a letter to the city of Mount Holly regarding late financial statements and some problems with bookkeeping that were considered to be material weaknesses by their auditors. They responded back to us with the reason for the delays, some an unusual year because of turnover. They've now hired a new finance director and a new deputy finance director. And they also have made some significant actions to improve bookkeeping practices, including hiring an outside consultant to help the finance department catch up as a result of the staff turnover, and they remedied the pre-audit issues that were a problem in the town tourism development authority. And so we, after reading their response, we determined that it was satisfactory.
Staff is recommending approval.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Or do I hear a motion?
So moved.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Penny, Okay, thank you, Mr. Penny. Any further discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Question. This says they anticipate a 7.5% tax increase. Does that mean it hasn't yet passed or they're just discussing it?
It's a referendum. So they haven't even voted yet on it. So if it doesn't pass the referendum,
The rate increase
there
will
won't
take
be
place.
any.
Okay. Is that it's a pretty big tax increase?
Yeah.
It is.
Thank you. And we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay, now Holly, that's Paget and Penny. Auditor Wood,
Aye.
thank you. Secretary Marshall. Aye. Ms. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Butler. Aye. Mr. Philbeck. Are you unmuted, Mr. Philbeck?
Aye, I'm sorry. Aye.
That's all right. Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. We're now on to our consent agenda. We'll try to get through this and we'll take a small break before we get to the folks in Clayton. That's the way you want to proceed, correct?
Yes.
Does anybody wish to have anything removed from the consent agenda? Is anybody, Shelby, on the phone? Probably not. Okay. I just had a quick question about the revenue neutrality of the water and sewer rates on the Shelby proposal. Is that anything that any of you have any expertise about?
If anyone is on from the city,
I don't think
message
they are.
us.
The statute requires it to be revenue neutral, correct? Okay. Okay. You're recommending everything on the consent agenda, correct?
Yes, we're recommending approval of the consent agenda items, which start with City of Charlotte and run through BOKF with the trustee approval, with the exception of the Clayton item, which is going to be considered separately.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to that effect? Motion by Ms. Harris, Councilwoman Harris, and seconded by Mr. Philbeck. Any further discussion about the consent agenda?
That was Mr. Paget, Mr. Treasurer.
Mr. Paget, excuse me. Any further discussion? Thank you, Mayor Paget. Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay, consent agenda, Harris, Paget, and only Clayton is taken off. Auditor Wood,
Aye.
thank you. Secretary Penny,
Aye.
Harris is a yes. Mr. Butler? Thank you. Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell?
Aye.
Secretary Marshall is temporarily absent.
Okay, Sharon, you just want to go ahead and we'll just take a 5-minute break.
Just ask for a consent of your board, please. You want to do it, bud? Without objection,
Somebody
the
like to
chair would like, no, just say without objection, the chair would like.
Without objection, the chair would like to take a exactly 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and hear from folks at Clayton. So we'll be back at 3:55. We're hereby in recess. the Clayton, City of Clayton Water and Sewer District. Is everybody with us?
Right, muted, right, David?
Come on up here and sit down. It's fine.
Okay, and we're broadcasting again. We're good.
All right. I want to say editorially, is everybody on the phone?
Yes, sir. Let me get them connected.
Yes, sir. See Secretary Penny and Mr. Philback.
Auditor, what are you still with us?
I'm here.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I have been to Clayton once to, at the request of the city as well as the LGC staff to meet with these two commercial industrial users of water and sewer in that area.
Mr. Healy, could you mute yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to start off by saying that we words cannot describe our appreciation for them being employers and taxpayers in North Carolina, especially in Johnston County and the city of Clayton. I went down there because of when you look at the size of this project in relation to the scope of the current Clayton water and sewer system, you quickly financially realize that what we're about to discuss is a very important topic. This is somewhat complicated by the fact that under different governors over different periods of time from both political parties, it should be no shock to anybody in this room that occasionally promises are made to large employers like this over the decades, and not everything is done at the end of the day. And there's nothing I can do about those issues. The only thing I can do is to try to figure out what's right, get it right, and keep it right as far as this particular transaction. You're about to hear about the fact that we are requesting some form of take or pay or surety bond, because when you look at the amount of money that this involves, if you just look at the amount of money that this contract requires just in the price increases in the last 7 months, you'll quickly realize just how big this project is in relation to the city as a whole. We have met with the Griffles folks. I went down there once. They came up here a couple of weeks ago, and we are trying as hard as we can in partnership with these corporate citizens and the city of Clayton to come to a position where we can recommend this to you. So what I promised is to put this on the agenda today. Now, I promised to put it on the agenda in hopes that all this would be a tick and tide by the time we got here today. I think you might hear that that's not exactly the case. And that's why you have a well thought out resolution in front of you. To the extent that anyone makes a motion to approve this, it'll be contingent on all these factors, which is things that I've also shared with both parties, all three parties. So with that, how would you like? Yes, sir.
Matt, do we have representatives of the companies here?
The Griffles folks are on the phone.
Okay, are these representatives of the city of Clayton?
Yes, sir.
So we do not have anybody here representing the two companies?
Griffles, but not Nova Nordist.
On the telephone?
Correct. And how would you like for this to proceed?
I'll give a brief summary of the actual terms of the project, and then we'll turn it over, I think, to the the town for their comments and then. So this is County Clayton, a sewer project, as the treasurer mentioned, for $80 million. This is being recommended through the SRF program through DEQ. This is for construction of a new wastewater treatment plant. And as treasurer, we are asking for conditional approval to give the town time to work out agreements with Novo Nordisk and Griffles as far as take or pay contracts or some similar arrangement to ensure that the town's residential customers in particular do not get left holding the bag, so to speak, if something were to happen with Griffles or Novo Nordisk and they were no longer using the capacity that they had initially agreed to. The costs have been rising rapidly on this project. When we first started, I believe we were at 120 million. Is that right, Tim? We're up to an estimate of 175 million now. And of course, because it's a design build project, we don't actually have complete contracts yet for all phases of the project. So the cost could go up even further. Clayton did not get a unit letter, so we had no deficiencies noted there. Outstanding debt for the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, they account for it combined, at June 30, 2020 was $26.5 million. And this again is another 80 million that we wanted to add to that, and that will not complete the project. There'll be another phase. The town believes they can provide adequate revenues for this project based on a $4,000 gallon usage. The residential bill is estimated to be water of $35.58 and sewer of $50.91, and then a miscellaneous monthly bill of $2. Rates are expected to increase almost 30% by 2026 as a result of the project. These rates are based on expected consumption by Griffles and Novo Nordisk as planned. So again, if they don't have capacity, if they contract for or provide surety for to the town, the rest of the town's customers could potentially be left having to absorb those rate increases. So this approval that we're asking for is conditional on the delivery of executable agreements with Novo Nordisk and Griffles that will mitigate a loss to the town such that it's acceptable to the town and those entities as well as the treasurer's office. And those are to be entered into no later than October 15th, 2021. So we will be able to report to you by the November LGC meeting if the conditions have been met. With us, we have in person Rich Capola, the interim town manager of the city of Clayton, and Robert McConnell, finance officer. They're both here. And then on the meeting virtually, we have Chris Healy, the president of Griffles Shared Services North America, and Shayla Jones, their principal governmental and public affairs.
Just come on up, have a seat if you'd like. I would like to add, as we move forward, that if you go out and look at these facilities, them not being here is just not something you could ever visualize. I think one of these plants is 5/8 of a mile long. It's a long plant. I'd hate to have to run around it. So if I had to run around both your plants, I think I'd be in trouble. But so when we came to these organizations, we tried to come with a contract that didn't reflect the entire term of the loan. It just reflected the riskiest part of the loan, which is the first 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Secondly, we all know that Clayton, Johnston County is probably the fastest growing area in the United States. And obviously that helps going forward. Thirdly, when Rich was introduced a while ago, he was introduced as the interim town manager. And the reason is there used to be another town manager who's no longer there. I went with that gentleman not knowing he wasn't going to be the town manager anymore, and got in a car and rode all through the woods about how all this is happening. This board has already approved an interim design contract for 10 or 14, $15 million a few last year, I guess. And we did so with the understanding that that we had with the old town manager, that these take or pay kinds of contracts would be in place, so that when we got to this phase of the project, it wouldn't be a problem. But I think it's safe to say, I'm not a lawyer, but whatever was done on paper in that first $15 million probably wouldn't have held the test of time. Safe way of saying. And so we're glad to have Chris on the phone again, as well as the folks in the city of Clayton. And you both have the floor, and be glad to hear what you have to say about where we are. And I want to, on behalf of the board and the citizens of your community who don't know who you are, I know how much blood, sweat, and tears that you've put into this. And this is not just on your mind anymore, it's in your marrow. And because this is how important this is. So I just want to, nobody's thanked you lately. I just want to say thank you. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Treasurer, and appreciate everybody's time this afternoon. I'm Rich Cabal. I'm the interim town manager, as Mr. Treasurer mentioned. Prior to being the interim town manager, though, I have been involved with this project since inception a few years ago, and we have been working diligently towards this moment pretty much for the last couple of years. At this point, we have a aged infrastructure. Our original plant was built in the 1960s and is kind of at its life's end. We have a couple agreements with our partners in Johnston County as well as the city of Raleigh that allows us to bridge a gap, extend the need for that plant to be fully replaced. But those agreements are beginning to come to their end of term. And through conversations with them, there is not really an opportunity to go beyond the dates that we've already got in place. So that is the reason that we've had to move forward with this project in these somewhat unprecedented times. We do not really have, we haven't worked with them actually to buy us as much time, literally and figuratively, at this point. However, moving forward as the design build element of the main project, with two other components of it being regular design bid build for the pipelines, that sums up to that total of approximately $175 million program in today's dollars, with a lot of assumptions in there based on where markets are going to go. The request here in front of you today to be able to move forward and hopefully get these agreements with the industry inked by October 15th is largely driven by the commodity prices, as well as just overall lead times in the different components of our project. In order for us to complete it by 2024, which is kind of the hard deadline with the agreements we have to go ahead and start purchasing and procuring and committing to different elements of the project in about the next, just a little over 30 days from now, based on our current schedule. I'll let Robert, the finance director, our finance director, speak a little more in terms of the nuts and bolts of the agreements. But essentially, to date, we've spoken with both entities about a couple of different options. Grifols and Chris Healy, who's on the phone, can also speak to their willingness to move forward with their agreement. We are opting, based on those conversations, to move forward with a surety bond agreement to be able to secure what is that kind of danger zone, that riskiest portion of our debt service for the life of the project. Robert, I'll let you get into the nuts and bolts, a little more of that. With Novo, they are looking at a little bit more of a traditional take-or-pay agreement, similar to, I think, some of the agreements that have been done previously for the energy savings contracts. We've got, by now, there's an agreement in the hands of their attorneys being redlined, so I am cautiously optimistic that we will receive their edits for consideration here any day. I guess with that, Robert, do you have anything you wanted to add?
So to be clear with the board, as far as these corporate users, Rifles is on surety of the ordinances on a take or pay. And Griffles, is they're 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 of the usage of the plant, post plant.
Total plant, when it's completed at 6 million gallons, they will represent about 30%. There will be about 1.8 million.
6 million gallons a day.
Out of the 6.
So it's a 6 million gallon a day plant.
Yes. This phase.
And which one was the 1.8?
Griffles is approximately 1.8, so approximately 30% of the overall flow in the 6 million gallon plant. Novo represents about another 10% of that balance for approximately 40% of the overall plant.
Okay, I'd like to go back and talk about the rates first. What Sharon stated is accurate. However, I'd like to point out that our current rate model that we work in conjunction with Black and Beach on, the rate model does not project any rate increases for our sewer services from 26 forward. We got nominal increases on the water side, basically 3-4% from that period out. So the reason why we don't have any sewer increases from that point forward is that the rate model is designed to accumulate sufficient reserves to get us to that point. When we hit that point, we got adequate revenues, so we're not going to need any incremental rate increases based upon the given inputs we have now with the flows and certain assumptions, costs and whatnot. Obviously, a given rate model, it's dependent upon the inputs and assumptions. So every time we go to update it, things can change. But right now, we're not looking at any significant rate increases beyond 2026 based upon our current projections. Going back to the design build, we have an encumbrance schedule that HDR drafted for us, and that's about $94.5 million that we will carry us through to January 2022. And the goal that is primarily predominantly tied up in trying to procure early procurement packages. We're trying to lock in those given materials and supplies that we can lock in pricing now to minimize the cost exposure. So it's important for us to be able to enter into those agreements, encumber those funds. And that's really what's driving our request to utilize an additional $80 million in SRF funding so we can enter into these contracts to get these items procured and lock in those prices to minimize our cost exposure. We also have a request in the state budget. I believe there's 20 million in the state budget right now of grant funding that assuming that SB 105, I think it is passed, the town will receive an additional 20 million of grant funding from the state, as well as we're putting in an application for additional SRF funding this fall towards this project. The DEQ has been very flexible in working with the town on this project, so we're trying to make a best effort to procure as much low-cost funding as we can to minimize the backfill it will have to do with revenue bonds.
I just want to note right there too that the rates that were mentioned by Sharon earlier do not assume that any of that low interest rate. We are assuming a market rate bond issuance conservative in our rate models based on those. So that's what those numbers were generated.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I understand what you're saying about the hoping for no rate increase after 26. And this is beyond your control, but with the fast growth of your county, there's still going to be more and more pressure on the sewer system, maybe for more expansion that wouldn't necessarily relate to you. So I don't know. I think you can say you're not going to anticipate a rate increase caused by your new businesses. And that's good.
For the benefit of people listening, that's member Scott Paget. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Butler.
My name is Paul Butler. I'm brand new to the board today. It's my first meeting. And if the other board members would just bear with me a minute or two, let me get a little credit. What river are you discharging into?
The News for News.
Do you have your permits?
Yes, we do.
Locked in?
Yes, we are currently, we're actually currently permitted up to 10 million gallons per day.
You're permitted up to 10 a day. What's the first discharge downstream from you?
Johnston County.
Johnson County Waste Treatment Plant. All right. Do you have a holding lagoon? Do you have an emergency lagoon designed in this?
We do not.
You do not? You do not have a triple line lagoon in case anything goes wrong that you can take the waste and hold it for 30 days? Okay. That'd be something I'd be thinking about if I were you. Who are the corporate people on the phone with us?
Raffles.
Chris Healy.
What is her job title?
It's a man.
She's the plant manager.
Chris Healy is the president. He's the president of their governmental services. He's based up in Washington, I believe, DC. Nova wasn't able to join.
Okay. And you have not negotiated you don't have ink on paper on a take or pay price yet. So much a gallon. They're gonna pay that or not?
We received commitment letters from both industries that they will make us whole if they were to cease their operations. We had
their outstanding part of the bond indebtedness
related to this project, their share. Yes, sir.
There is a condition that our agreements are actually worded such that once we actually have final pricing for all the elements of the program, then it will set the actual final number that they're.
Is that agreement signed by corporate?
Novo's letter was signed by the plant manager. Griffo's letter was signed by their president of their Doug Burns. Griffo's letter was that letter. I think I sent that to Tim Ramaki on Monday.
So do you know if their board of directors have approved this agreement?
Formal approval, no. Nice. Chris, if you want to speak to where you're at on the Griffles.
And I'm not, let me tell you fellas, I've done several of these. It's in my first rodeo. I'm doing a revenue bond for an industry, and I just know where the choke points are on it. And I appreciate it. The fact that you don't have, and are you using forced mains or gravity flow?
Combination of both.
And how far have you got to push the wastewater?
We have two separate, so the total 175 million, about 120 of that represents the plant itself. The remainder is two separate pipelines, both about 5 million gallons per day apiece, averaging 3 to 4 miles.
I thought you said the plant wasn't going to do but 6 million gallons a day. But you just said 5 million gallons each?
The individual pump stations for the future, that total 10 million that we're permitted to,
right?
They're being designed to make sure that we can handle a total of 5 million gallons at full build out.
And do you have diesel pumps backed up to, have you got design for diesel pumps in there?
We're going
back. You lose power.
We prefer diesel prime backups. We do have generators also in certain locations. So right now the plan is to have diesel pumps.
Can I, before we turn the meeting over to Chris and then go back to Mr. Butler in just a second. Chris, thank you for joining us. I just want to, the red line contract that's gone to Nova Nordis for take or pay, that's not going to be signed by the plant manager, is it?
No, the commitment letter that we got from Nova that stated they would pay their net revenue impact.
Right.
That was signed by Chad.
Okay.
Who's their plant manager there.
The actual take or pay contract that you would enter into, who would it ultimately be signed by?
Well, I do believe Chad is their North American.
The Nova Nordis
Mr. Treasurer, they broke up. I could not hear the answer to your question.
We are understating this gentleman's role at Nova Nordis. We call him plant manager. What's his title again?
President of Novo Nordisk Pharmaceutical Industries LP.
Yeah.
That's his.
So we've
Has
elevated.
the authority to buy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, are you on the phone?
Yes, sir, Mr. Treasurer. Sure am.
We're good. Thank you for joining us. And we got a little bit of a complication here. You're sort of talking into a cavernous room. Some of our board members are driving. Some of our board members are remote. Some of our board members are here. And so just bear with us as we may talk over each other. And as you give your remarks, when we were meeting in person, I thought I heard that at the end of the day, you would be willing to go either way on the take or pay or the surety bond. It may be the preference of this board to have everybody on the take or pay. And so I just want to make sure that you would still entertain this, because all I'm trying to do today, Chris, is do what I've told you I've been trying to do since we first met. And that is get this to the point of this commission saying yes, even if it's with a lot of whereases in terms of our proclamation. And I do want to say this because I always forget things like this. I know we're all in fear of inflation because we're seeing it on this project and everything else we're doing in the state of North Carolina. I hope that whatever you enter into on this project, it would go the other way also. That if prices did start to plummet, if things did start to come more back into equilibrium, that you would be a participant in the cost of this project going down, not just going up. So, Chris, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Treasurer, for putting this topic on the agenda and for the opportunity to meet with you and your staff a couple of times. Special thanks to Tim and Biff for all their work on this. And thank you to the members of the LGC. So, yeah, Grifols has been in Clayton since 1972 through the predecessor companies that have been located there. And while the treasurer may not want to run around the property, I think if he was on one of his motorcycles, he would probably have a good time riding around the property. We recently announced an intention to donate 100 acres of that property to Johnston Community College and the town of Clayton to build out a transportation hub and a satellite campus. We've got 1,700 Clayton citizens and North Carolina citizens working on campus there. We've got a cafeteria for our employees and every amenity that you could imagine. We are all about our site in Clayton. It is actually the largest plasma manufacturing facility in the world. The medicines we make there are produced from donations of human blood plasma, and they're used to treat people with a variety of rare and chronic diseases. These are really life-saving medicines, including work that we've done to address COVID-19 and therapies we've developed to address that, as well as Ebola virus. So truly, the folks in Clayton are saving lives around the world and addressing some of the world's greatest public health challenges. We would do nothing to jeopardize the financial well-being of Clayton or its citizens. So we are all in. As we've had these discussions, we've understood that the goal is to make sure that the people of Clayton are not left holding the bag in the event that Grifols decided to close doors and move out of the state. We know that's not going to happen, but we would absolutely put our money where our mouth is and procure a surety bond to guarantee against that to make sure that the town is kept whole. Mr. Treasurer, as you noted, if a take or pay is preferred, I think there's scope to consider that, absolutely. We would want to make sure that there were all the protections and equilibrium clauses built in there. So as you say, if prices are declining, we can benefit from that. Or if there's, an underage one year and an overage a following year, that there's some sort of smoothing of those fees. So the short answer is yes, we would be happy to consider a take or pay if that's what it's going to take to get it done. The surety would be a preferred and expedient route, but we understand that we're not the only game in town here. So appreciate the opportunity to give comments and happy to answer any questions.
Where is your water coming from?
Water's coming.
Is it
I'm sorry?
groundwater?
It's processed water that we purchase from Johnson County Utilities, coming from the News River.
And where do they get their water? Where?
News River.
News River, Rhode Island,
Above or downstream from you?
downstream.
So you're gonna be discharging in, they're gonna be taking their water out downstream from your discharge.
Some of their water also comes from Smithfield. Some of the total that they currently own.
You got it permitted with a downstream intake?
It's much further down. Yes,
What is your definition of much further?
several miles.
River miles or air miles?
River miles.
Okay. Chris, I can't tell you, you know, you can't control a goosebump. That's one of the bodily functions you can't control. And it just gave me goosebumps to hear what you just said about y'all's willingness to enter into a take or pay contract. And with those protections, we manage right above where we're sitting, Chris, we manage $124 billion. And so I'm very familiar with waterfall, where one year you might be a little bit short, and the next year, as far as investment fees, you might be a little bit over. So I think getting that language into this take or pay contract is very doable. I have complete confidence in Biff and the other Tim and the other analysts on the LGC staff to work with these folks at the city of Clayton and to get that done. And I think it'd be really nice. These are both world-class grade A companies, but it'd be really nice to have both on the same level as far as the take or pay is concerned. And I appreciate you saying that. That means a lot to me. And I just want to ask staff before we're going to have more discussion about this, but I want to ask staff, does this resolution reflect what I just said, generally speaking, or is it even going to that level of detail? Look over it while we're still discussing.
Mr. Treasurer, if I may, just one more comment, and thank you for those comments. As I noted, we are happy to consider the take or pay. We started with the surety. I guess just to be clear, the point that you know I emphasized when we met last time is, from our vantage point, it's an either or, right? It's not an also and. We're happy to do the take or pay, or we're happy to do a surety, but both of those would be you know, prohibitively costly and at least in our mind unreasonable.
Yeah, it's not a it's going to taste great and be less filling at the same time. So it's not going to be both. I mean, I don't even drink. I don't know why I keep giving these beer analogies. It's not very smart of me. Maybe I should drink. Seconds that. Anyway, any more? Thank you, staff. Any more?
Is this a tertiary plan?
Let me get Secretary Marshall, then I'll come
Well,
back.
I just have a question. What happens if no agreements are obtained by October 15th?
At this point, we delay our project and take some of that certainty out of that $175 million estimate that we have currently. Big part of that is to lock in some of the pricing early so that as we see continued escalation of prices, we have certainty so that by the time we get to GMP, it's going to be a 90% design GMP, but about half of the packages or half of the plant will have already been procured. So we'll know exactly what that portion of the plant will cost. And the rest will be a normal design build GMP at 9%.
Everybody's got strong motivation to get it done by October 15th.
Yeah. And to Secretary Marshall's point and to Chris's point, this take or pay could be written so that if they underutilized 1 year for any reason, that there could be a smoothing of that. So if they overutilize the next year, they wouldn't be penalized for the under year. And secondly, to write in the contract, you'll write in the procurement contract that if there's cost reductions as the commodity prices fall, or if anything, interest rates aren't going to fall anymore. But if the commodity prices fall or any component of this falls, that these corporate citizens will be proportionally able to participate in those savings. Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Did you? I'm not a judge, but I need you to say yes instead of not here. Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Butler, you have anything else?
Well, as I said, this is my first meeting, and this just happens to be a kind of project that I've experienced in doing several of them, running out of designing. If airplanes crash into the discharge system, what are you going to do? Is there any contingency going to be built in to service this debt for 2 years if a plane falls on the plant? Who is going to service the debt? How are the bond holders going to be protected? Is there going to be a reserve fund incorporated into it?
Yeah, the rate model currently has reserve accumulation built into it, so we would be able
How much? I mean, will it carry the debt for 2 years?
It depends. I don't know if we would carry the debt for 2 years. I'd have to go back and actually look at the amount to see how much the reserve is, but I don't know that it's, I think, look at.
I'll attempt to tell you, Mr. Bowers.
The future debt service is about $10.9 million a year.
So
you're looking at.
You need $20 million set aside.
But I will add, based on my memory, is that the reason that we came in with this take or pay notion was not for the term of the loan. It's for the most critical part of building the plant, borrowing the money, getting it up and running. And then after that, I think the reason we settled on 7 to 9 years, nobody get squirrely on me. I'm probably a little bit off on that number, but because you're past the danger point of being able to build, you have enough reserves built up in case what you just said happens.
Yeah, we were focusing on the period fiscal 26 through 2032. That was what we identified as the danger zone.
The first 6 years. Mr. Secretary Penny or Alder Wood or Mayor Pageant or Mr. Philback, any questions?
No, sir.
Not for me. Not for me, Treasurer Falwell.
No, I think all mine were asked.
Okay, Ms. Harris. Cindy?
Did the members who are on virtual, did you get my email that had a copy of the resolution attached?
This is Mike. I did.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, Dr. Beth Wood, I did.
I did.
Okay, good. Okay, great. Thank you. So do you want to look at that, Treasurer? You asked a few minutes ago about what? The conditions are just listed at the top of page 2. And right now, and this is just a starting point, right? We want the staff one to get something on paper. The first one references those 2 memoranda of understanding, the MOU, here, town and the 2 industries. And both of those documents reference that the industries would commit. Well, they're going to negotiate to get to this point. That way they would commit to your minimum, the minimum discharge, the minimum usage, right?
Right.
And then there would have to be figured out the mechanism or formula to if those minimum discharges were not reached, right? So this is what staff came up with, that the industry sign. Did I take out the word essential? Final contract specified in the MOUs no later than 10/15/21. That the contracts define the mechanism or formula by which the industry's obligations are quantified once that GMP and financing costs are nailed down using vernacular. And that their industry's obligations, this is going to provide protection to the town ratepayers. And then we had, in the event that the industries no longer need treatment capacity or the needs are significantly reduced, and then we put a note that somebody needs, give us what is fair or what works for what's significantly defined as. And then I threw this in, for lack of a better thought, just as a suggestion, that these conditions will be determined to have been fulfilled by the joint agreement of our Secretary Edmondson and Director of Debt, Tim Ramach.
Thank you. And I would just add that that was a very important point she just made. We're not talking about mothballing the plants, but if you had an extended period of lower water and sewer usage, that's what we're also trying to protect. Not them just not being here anymore, but just a long extended period of low usage. Thank you for that resolution. Members, I would entertain a motion to approve this transaction from the LGC board based on the resolution that is in front of us.
I move the approval.
Okay.
State Auditor Beth Wood, I second.
Okay.
Now we have more discussion.
Cindy Aikens, launching discussion. I think we're all going to feel a whole lot more comfortable if we want to, I don't know if it's right, we may need your all's input. If there, and I'm looking at the town representatives, is there a percent? Is there a number? What should we say is significantly reduced? Because that's just, if you don't nail that down, my two attorney colleagues would agree, that's just not going to cut it.
Don't know, a significant reduction.
Yeah, I don't know if it's at a
10%.
That's a good starting point to throw out there, whatever. I don't know if the number crunchers can.
This also could be a point of negotiation between the town and.
Right.
This is true.
I'd rather leave it at that.
Let them figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Fair.
Yeah.
You think,
I appreciate that. Yeah,
Mr. Healy,
appreciate that.
we have a amen for Mr. Healy.
All right.
I'm sorry,
we have
ma'am.
a motion.
Oh, well, did you hear what was just, this is Cindy Aiken. Did you hear what was suggested by Secretary Marshall? Let the parties negotiate in the next 2 weeks or whatever it is, what you think significantly is, what number that should be.
I think that's the right approach, and 2 weeks certainly works with our time frame.
That puts it at the end of September. Okay, thank you.
Treasurer.
Yes, sir, Mr.
If they have this on the 15th, does that mean we will look at it at our November meeting for final approval?
We're approving it today, conditioned on this they're fulfilling the city and the corporate citizens fulfilling the terms of this resolution.
And we built in that it would be Secretary Edmondson and Tim Ramaki that will decide, have they met these conditions? They'll need to submit the final agreement, taker pays, to us, and then we say, okay, check, check, check. That makes sense?
So
We could, I mean, that's our, if the board wants to do it a different way, that's totally up to you.
No, I
What
want
do we
to
have?
just confirm what Mr. Butler said. So if all the conditions are met, then it does not come back before us.
that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that if you, I hate to use the word trust, if you have confidence in Sharon and Tim with my advice
And their staff.
and staff, yeah, Biff, and everyone.
Yeah, that's
That was just my suggestion.
that's my understanding. And once again, this is in different phases. So they'll be coming back to us again. This is not the
That's-
total part of it. And obviously, no one wants the $90 million, I forget how it was described, but a monument that doesn't work. I mean, they want to be able to turn it on and work it. So.
And this is Cindy, not to say that all of their borrowing needs to be scrutinized carefully, but this is a loan from the state of North Carolina. So it's my responsibility, our responsibility to plug in as much protection for the state of North Carolina, because we are the bank in this, just in this.
Using our money, the state's money.
Yes. So we're just thinking, as best we can, make it commercial, feasible, but yet as much protection as possible. That makes sense.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion?
I forgot who moved. Was it Penny?
Secretary Penny.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
All right. Secretary Marshall. Aye. Ms. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Butler? Mayor Paget? Mr. Philbeck? Mr. Falwell?
I know we're getting ready to lose some board members. I just want to say, maybe one day we can have an LGC meeting in that conference room at Griffles. I'm sure, and let our board members our LGC members take a tour of all the esoteric, incredible stuff that you're doing in trying to analyze blood and how important you are to not just the economy of Johnson County and Clayton, but like the whole country's economy. And as far as Nova Nordist, as you may know, I think I'm saying this properly, for people like me who used to have to give his grandmother a shot in 1965, they're developing the oral insulin tablet. And I can tell you as the chair of the state health plan, insulin adherence, especially among men state employees, sucks. And we got to do better. And I think what Nova Nordist is doing about having an oral insulin pill instead of a shot is going to be hopefully revolutionary in the lives of individuals. So I want to thank both of you. And we've completed the vote?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we did.
Approved.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for joining us. Thank you all for coming up. And if there's anything that these board members have said or agreed to find different, you got to disclose it. Don't wait for us to discover it, because that will not be a good outcome for the second phase of this environment. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Treasurer Falwell. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate it. Where are we?
The budget resolution.
Okay.
Number 23.
Item 23.
On your order.
This is a resolution, members. We're asking all of our boards to do this. As you, Sam Watts is here to give a very brief description of why this resolution is necessary. We have presented this to 3 or 4 other boards that I've chaired. All of them are dominated by appointees of the governor, the Senate, and the House. And all of these resolutions presented to the previous boards have passed unanimously. So
I will be brief, but I do want to start when I started with all the board. I want to apologize for having to bring this to you. Periodically, and I mean every 5 or 6 years or so over the last 30 to 40 years, an issue has come up with the state budget process, state accounting system, and how we manage the operation of the Department of State Treasury. Usually when there's a new budget analyst in the state budget office, new analyst in the fiscal research division, or someone who just wants to fix something that looks unusual to them. And we explain, we even have charts and graphics we use to explain why the Department of State Treasurer is accounted for and budgeted for differently because of the number of different funds that we have coming in here and the extremely high percentage of our funds that are, if you will, not state funds. They're fiduciary funds that belong to the participants. Retirement systems, in the case of the LGC, the money we use to pay for the operations of the division and commission are a very small slice of the second quarter-cent sales tax that's locally opted into.
Say that again, please.
So the operations of the LGC and the state local government finance division are paid for out of the second 1/4% of local sales tax.
For the state of North Carolina.
State collects it for local governments. And then
and 1/4 of 1 cent is what funds the treasurer's office. Is that correct?
Tiny slice of that. And we
second 1/2 cent.
The second one.
Yeah, second 1/2 cent.
And so that is, and we literally send Secretary Penny a bill every month for the commission's operations, and we're reimbursed on that basis. And we are accountable to the LGC. We're accountable to the General Assembly for setting the basic parameters. But it is not something that's
And how much money is that? What's the total budget?
I'm sorry, 8, 7, 8, somewhere, but around 8, 7, 8.
It's about $7 or $8 million.
How many?
$7 or $8 million a year.
7 or 8 million?
To run the LGC.
They run the LGC. Well, and what about, is the treasurer funded through this $0.5 or off the sales tax?
That's part of the reason that we're different in the accounting system, because the treasurer's office and our centralized legal team are all cost accounted as a share of service back to the different divisions that are funded in different manners. So there's a share that comes back to the LGC to pay for central department services. That's part of why we look a little different in the budget process. And so usually we explain that. Normally and this year there's a new analyst involved, and we spent hours and hours attempting to explain it, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. That every component of it is set up that way, set up the way it is for a reason. And that there's good legal rationale for doing so. And in some cases, reasons for it, if the law were changed, we would not be able to follow something that's inconsistent with federal law, particularly the retirement system side of things. Well, this went on for 9 or 10 months, and we thought that we hoped that we successfully explained it to the legislative analyst and to the committee chairs. We met with the committee chairs that handle the department's appropriations, and we managed to explain it to the state Senate committee chairs and the staffers that serve there. But the House committee chairs remained unconvinced and included a provision in the House's version of the state budget that would effectively reorient the entire management of every division of the department such that it would come under the control of the General Government Subcommittee, even funds that are not state funds, to be reappropriated or cut the year following.
That would be rude. Extremely rude.
It puts money in the budget for someone to control whose money it isn't. They don't belong. They don't have responsibility over it, but they were taking responsibility. Yeah. And so we successfully requested and were successful in removing the amendment, or removing that provision by amendment in the appropriations subcommittee on a 6-7 vote. The chairman tried again the next day in the appropriations full committee, and we prevailed on a 33-27 vote. We tried again the next day on the floor of the House on a voice vote, which went down at least 3-1. He tried again the next morning to get a recorded vote instead of a voice vote on the floor, and was told that he had already lost 3 times and it was time to stop. And in the last 8 hours, I've learned that the chairman has tried again in the conference budget negotiations that are ongoing this week behind closed doors to get the provision put back in the state budget in an perhaps even larger way to affect pull more agencies into the same vote. So, Treasurer's mentioned we have asked the State Health Plan Board, Investment Advisory Committee, the Supplemental Retirement Plan, which is the 401k, mostly for law enforcement officers, they were going to take that money to, and the LGC. And we will ask also the teasers and the retirement system benefits boards to do the same. We've had a unanimous vote from each of the boards to encourage the General Assembly not to do this.
Who's the chairman? I'm sorry. Who's the person? Name the person.
The The senior chairman of the General Government Subcommittee is George Cleveland from Onslow County.
Okay,
So
thank
we're
you.
asking you to approve this, and if Alter Wood is still on the phone, Sam was talking quietly, but there's still attempts to bring other state agencies in under this, so we'll talk about that offline. But
Okay.
Sam, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and I would ask the board for a motion and a passage of this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion?
Yeah,
This
I'll just my discussion is, have they not got enough else to do?
Exactly.
Amen. Amen.
I have
Amen.
never seen a group of people that have messed with so many things in 1 year or 2 years, and it just defies me. I mean, it's like, that's all I want to say.
And this is, as I said earlier, go ahead, Secretary Penny.
Let me say I'm not going to disagree with anything that has been said, but the longstanding policy of the Department of Revenue and the Secretary of Revenue is that we just don't speak to or take positions, particularly since this provision is a provision which I think actually slightly modifies my act, the act that I administer, because I might have to interpret it in some way or shape or form, not likely, but might. I want to abstain, but I am not disagreeing with, but make it clear, I am not disagreeing with any of the, with the rendition that has been given on what this bill does.
Secretary Penny, that was well stated, and thank you. We have a motion second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
All right, and this is the resolution of the LGC to oppose efforts to assert control over our funding sources. All right, Auditor Wood,
Aye.
thank you. We have a Harris second, Butler, Mayor Paget, Mr. Philbeck, Treasurer Falwell,
Aye.
and Secretary Penny abstained, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion carries.
Thank you, members. We're going to try to rush through the rest of these updates. Wilkesboro update, Sharon?
Well, Cindy has to do it. Oh, yeah, this is quick. Again, welcome, Mr. Butler, and we're just calling everyone's attention to periodically wait for personal, financial, business relationships, look for possible conflicts of interest, and the evaluation by Ethics Commission for Mr. Butler shows no identified actual or potential conflicts of interest, but everyone needs to just continue to observe your situation compared to the agenda each month. And as Laura wrote, the minutes will reflect Mr. Butler's evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon, Wilkesboro update?
Wilkesboro update. Last month, the commission compelled Wilkesboro to hire help to get their audits caught up. They have hired somebody very reputable to help them move forward. They've developed some realistic deadlines to get their audits done. And today we actually received some very preliminary partial financial statements from them for 2019. And they're confident they'll have full statements to us by September 30th for 2019. So far they're complying with what we asked them to do. As far as the unit updates, Mr. Treasurer, is it okay if I move into that?
Yeah, without objection, because we're going to lose a adjourn. Without objection, we will we'll put on them all together.
Words out of my mouth. We're only going to update you on the ones that have action items. The rest of them, the updates are in your packets, and you can look over those. If you have any questions, please reach out to staff.
Okay.
Roll.
You want me to go ahead? Okay. All right. So I have a unit summary like I do for each one of the units. I only have votes that I need for you to take under Eureka, Robertsonville, and Kingstown. So those will be the ones I'm talking about.
Okay.
This month, After working for a couple of months on these, staff have executed or have developed fiscal accountability agreements with all 5 of these entities that are in essence an exit strategy for them. And so those are attached for you to read. As you choose, please let me know if you have any questions about those agreements. They are not short-term agreements. There's some long-term things that have to happen in those fiscal accountability agreements before we can begin to think about turning local control back over to those units. So first, Eureka, there's an update there. There's a vote needed for Eureka on the change in appointment of a deputy finance officer. We're switching out one staff person who is involved in another unit and moving in and appointing, we're switching out Michael Milam and appointing Catherine Howe. I'm sorry, Catherine Howe, and moving some other folks around, including terminating Sharon as an account signatory so that she won't have to mess with that. So I'll be asking you to vote on that in a minute. Cliffside, we have an update there, a fiscal accountability agreement for you to look at. So the next one that we have a vote on is Robertsonville, which is further down in your packet. There's an update. There's also a resolution to appoint a deputy finance officer for the town of Robertsonville. This one is good news. The commission, we're asking the commission to appoint and designate an additional deputy finance officer for the town. We want you to appoint Angela Bagley, who is an employee of the town and will eventually be the town's new finance officer when we move on. For the purposes of signing checks and drafts, pre-auditing purchase orders and obligations and disbursements, and as an account signatory on the bank accounts. We want to retain Pam Worthen as a deputy finance officer for those same purposes. You adopted that in March of this year. We want to retain Kendra Ball as deputy finance officer. She's an LGC staff person, as well as Becky G. Gillespie as finance officer. Becky is also a finance LGC employee. And so the only change there is the appointing of Angela so that she can begin assuming those roles. The second item I will be asking you to vote on for Robertsonville is a budget amendment that actually covers 4 pages. There's changes to a water fund, an electric fund, and a general fund that are all related to a DEQ operating grant and a AIA grant. They're they're not increasing the fund balance or the total amount of the appropriations in any fund except the water fund. They're increasing that by $13,224 for an AIA grant. The electric fund is a 0 increase. The general fund is a $30,000 increase, and that's for a transfer from a special revenue fund. And a $35,000 decrease in the water fund for excuse me, 3,500. I'm sorry, thank you, for a DEQ operating grant. So I'll be asking you to vote on those changes. and they're all grant funded changes, and they're all related to reallocating some grant money. And then the final thing I will be asking you to vote on in Robertsonville is a special revenue fund or special revenue fund ordinance for the DEQ emergency operating grant of $70,500. And this is a grant that DEQ awarded to Robertsonville because they are distressed and are a unit that is owned by, the finances are owned by the local government commission. And they are going to use this for training, for some additional contracted services, for computer equipment, for data conversion on some badly needed utility software, and then a transfer to the general fund. That's that $30,000 general fund increase that you saw, and that is to pay for some increased bookkeeping costs to help them catch up. So that's what I'm asking you to vote for on Robertsonville. Kingstown, which is the last big town I need you to vote on something for, and we'll do all of that together. Kingstown has 3 items. One is a budget amendment for $2,000 that moves between Parks and Rec, increasing that balance, and decreasing public safety for some money that they do not need in the current year for contracting with the sheriff. And then there also is a grant project ordinance for Kingstown that's related to coronavirus for coronavirus recovery funds. The town has already received $107,000 and some change for coronavirus funds. Their total allocation is going to be $215,000. They are developing the project. What the uses of these funds will be in those 5 categories there that are authorized by state law for the town to use, and they will flesh out this more as they get further along. The final thing I need you to approve for Kingstown is a resolution to approve and ratify a contract to do their mowing. This is a contract for something that's routinely budgeted. We just have just now gotten the contract executed. It is something that is in their budget every year. They are just now getting it ratified as of July 2021. The contract was executed between the vendor or the service provider, town, and then our finance officer and Cutler pre-audited. So those are all of the items that I will need you to vote for in the unit update this month.
Can we vote on all those at one time?
Yes, without objection.
I'll make a motion to approve all of those.
Mayor Patrick makes a motion, second.
Second.
All right, Phil back second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll.
Thank you. Eureka, Robertsonville, and Kingstown. Patch and Philbeck.
Yes.
Auditor Wood.
Aye.
Thank you. Secretary Penny.
Aye.
Ms. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Butler. Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
And I'm assuming Secretary Marshall did not call in. I've got her absent. Okay, thank you.
One more brief item by Susan, and then we'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
We've got updates for the towns of Scotland Neck as well as Spring Lake. Nothing specific that I need to report there. We're continuing to meet with Scotland Neck monthly and continuing to closely monitor Spring Lake. We're getting the financial information we need from Scotland Neck, but we are awaiting ongoing information from Spring Lake. I have one last item that I wanted to talk to you about. This is a new item that we have, or a new approach that we have for units that are on our unit assistance list. We've developed limited fiscal accountability agreements with these. They are much more generic in nature than what Scotland Neck and Spring Lake financial accountability agreements are. We're getting ready to execute these with 27 municipalities and 1 county who were on our unit assistance list. We're looking to provide some enhanced monitoring with these units so that the units can be restored to fiscal health and ultimately removed from our unit assistance list. I've got some criteria here on page 4 of your handout that shows how we selected the units. They're missing, several of them are missing multiple years of audits, late or missing documents, low percentages of restricted fund balance available when we compared them with our peers. They ranked high, and they have high risk in internal control issues, water and sewer fund fiscal issues, or general fund fiscal issues. All of the units of government will be get a virtual or an in-person visit by LGC staff. We'll be reviewing their 2023 proposed budgets as they prepare those in May or June next year. We'll also be providing fiscal training for their governing boards, and we'll be reviewing their budget to actuals in October of 2021, January, March, and April of 2022. We're expecting that these boards will all sign and complete these fiscal accountability agreements and return them back to us by September 30th. And if you'll look, you have an attachment that includes, I didn't think you wanted to read 2028 fiscal accountability agreements. So we provided you a list with the units of local government sorted by population. You can see these are all, most of them, pretty small populations. And then the background or reason why we felt like they needed a fiscal accountability agreement. And you'll see 27 municipalities and 1 county, Terrell County, at the bottom of the list. So that is all I have. Any questions?
That's all you have?
That's all I have.
Quite enough.
It looks like this.
There you go. So,
Mr. Treasurer,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
State Auditor Wood, I have a question. So Susan, if these are so generic, how will you hold them accountable to it? I don't quite understand that piece, and we could talk about it offline if you want to. But that's the thing that comes across. If they're so generic, how do we hold them accountable if they misinterpret or don't interpret like you meant it?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. We are still requiring their boards to sign, and we expect them all to sign, just like they did. These 28 agreements will be part of an and I will be using LGC staff that are not typically involved in unit assistance to monitor these. So we'll do follow up with them. The expectation is, and they got essentially the same agreement, but they will be signing an agreement that explains that they have to meet these specific requirements that are on this list, providing their budget to actuals to us, all of those sorts of things. So we'll be following up, just not as extensively as we have with Scotland Neck and Spring Lake. Frankly, that's not sustainable. These are units that could potentially be the next one that we need to go into. They are high priority for us. It
builds on their unit letter issue.
And it does. It builds on their unit letter issues. Thank you, David. So
Okay.
they will be monitored. And so they'll have a chance to raise the issues if they don't understand them.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. With that, we'll go around the horn and see if anybody has any closing remarks.
I've got one quick question. I noticed that some changes the legislature made to, I guess you could say, LG authority was removing any, I guess, oversight to charter schools from LGC.
I'll be glad to comment on that. That was accountability without responsibility. Charter schools fall specifically under the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and not the Treasurer's Office. So these audits were just coming into no person's land. And we had no enforcement ability. We got them. We couldn't do anything with them. So I sit on the state's Board of Education. And so now the audits are going to go to the place that actually has responsibility for them, which is North Carolina Public Department. Our problem, they don't do well, and they owe the pension system millions of dollars. But that's not your problem. That's another board. So does that answer your question, Mayor?
Well, it does, and I can understand the logic of that. I sure hope that, because I haven't been completely satisfied with the way some of those operate and their fiscal responsibility for a lot of things. So anyway, I understand.
No, there's a huge subcommittee of State Board of Education that deals specifically with charter schools. And it is, I can tell you as a member.
Or not.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be our nice time of the meeting. Anyway,
Sorry.
I'll point out to commission members, there is a legislative update in your packet. We did not go over it today because of time. There's a summary of the legislative changes that have occurred so far, including the one with the charter schools.
Sam Watts did a fantastic job on that. So,
See our legislative guy.
yes, it's the best one in North Carolina. So, other comments from the board members? Just two quick things. You tentatively approved Wilson, North Carolina at the last board meeting based on a couple of things getting cured because there was a timeliness issue there. Just want to report that we did cure those things and those bonds got approved without us having to come back in front of the commission. You saw the press release that was put out around the number of units that got off the unit assistance list. And as I've talked about this across the state in the last few weeks, when I asked the rhetorical question, did y'all hear about Apple relocating their headquarters to a Husky? And no one's heard of that because it didn't happen. No, and I say that as a way of shocking people into realizing that we do have towns like a Husky that have put in good governments and put in competent managers who have had transparency, discipline, and been able to make the tough choices to get themselves back in line. And that's what these units leaving the unit assistance list reflects. A lot of tough choices by a lot of discipline, by a lot of local officials. And so I just want to applaud the LGC staff for all they did to help these folks get off the list. And And lastly, entertain a motion to adjourn in honor of and memory of all the damage, both personal damage, physical damage, and mental damage and deaths that occurred through the floods of Western North Carolina.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Harris, second by Mr. Butler. Thank you, Mr. Butler. You just reminded me during that conversation about Clayton that the old adage is that do unto those downstream what those upstream have done unto you. So I haven't thought about this.
There's a few things about that
I know.
yeah, there's a couple of things about Clayton.
Anyway, clerk will call the roll.
Auditor Wood? Aye. Martin's absent. Kenny?
Aye.
Q? Dean Paget?
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
Jennifer Folwell?
Aye. Thank you all, and we're adjourned.